Story 1. My female boss refused to book my flight for a $5 million deal. She insulted me. Why bring trash? But I knew something she didn't. The client CEO is my brother. I smiled and said, good luck in the meeting. It's a $5 million deal today. Do you think I should carry the trash? Carla's remarks left me speechless. On the other end of the line, I could hear her giggling with delight. I was unable to get through to her after the call ended, and the phone was switched off. She had planned this from the start, but Carla is unaware that my brother is the CEO of the client company. I called my brother and added myself to the standby list for the upcoming flight. I've put up with her small-time harassment up until now, but I'm at my breaking point. Carla needs to confront reality. My name is Juliana, and I'm 26 years old. I work for a trading company in the sales division. My sales proposals are highly appreciated, and I consistently achieve the highest sales performance thanks to my positive outlook, strong interpersonal skills, and in-depth product knowledge. Even within the company, I have received recognition and am frequently referred to as the base of the sales department. Naturally, though, things weren't always easy from the start. I made a lot of mistakes when I first started working right after high school. Insufficient product knowledge occasionally resulted in unhappy clients and unsuccessful negotiations. Looking back, I used to hate studying and tried to land contracts using only tactful conversation. I didn't want to continue my education after high school, so I entered the workforce immediately. As a child, I was often compared to my intelligent brother. No matter how hard I studied, I could never match his grades. I felt like my parents were subtly evaluating my performance whenever they praised him. I studied every day, had tutors, and even went to cram school, leaving no time for play. Nevertheless, I scored below 600 on the SAT I took for college. My brother, on the other hand, scored nearly 1,600 and was accepted into a highly prestigious university. Despite my best efforts, I was unable to outperform my brother or live up to my parents' expectations. After realizing that no matter how hard I tried, I would never meet their standards, I started to hate studying. I lost interest and didn't want to experience any more misery. Determined, I chose to start working right out of high school instead of going to college. At the time, I believed that if I stopped going to school, I wouldn't have to study anymore, but in reality, assimilating into society required ongoing learning. I used to hate it, but one day I offered a customer a product better suited to their needs than what they originally planned to buy, and it completely transformed my life. I was thrilled to see the customer smile and express gratitude for my recommendation. For the first time, I realized how much I enjoy learning. Because of that realization, I started studying product knowledge more than anyone else. My current sales performance is the result of all that effort. Good results often attract unwanted jealousy. Recently, I have caught the attention of a problematic person. Her name is Carla. She joined our company 6 months ago and is also 26 years old. She was reportedly the top salesperson in the sales division of a rival company where she previously worked. When she first joined, I was assigned to be her trainer. Nice to meet you. I'm Juliana, and I'll be in charge of your training, I said. Really? You're my trainer? You seem kind of unreliable. Are you sure this is okay? Carla replied, looking clearly dissatisfied. She seemed very confident in her abilities, almost mocking me as she looked at my face. Looking back, I realized that I disliked Carla from our very first encounter. But work is work. Since I was assigned to train her, I had to do it properly. I thought I was teaching her everything carefully and seriously, even including a thank you note with shipments. Juliana, are you really using such an inefficient method? Unbelievable. This product is more popular than that one, so you should know that just by thinking logically. She kept making these kinds of condescending comments. Sure, adding a thank you note takes extra effort and some people might throw it away without reading it, but there are also people who appreciate it. No one feels bad about receiving a thank you note, so I believe it's worth the effort to express gratitude for choosing our product and buying from me. As for the products themselves, it's more important to consider what the customer wants rather than what's popular. For example, if a customer wants fruit rich in vitamin C, suggesting a sugary sweet just because it's popular is unlikely to lead to a sale. At worst, it might even anger the customer. Even if it doesn't go that far, suggesting acerola products, which have much more vitamin C than lemons, might be more satisfying than just recommending lemons because they are commonly associated with vitamin C. Engaging with customers to understand their needs and adjusting my recommendations based on their reactions is my style. Popular items are well received by many but might not be the best for the customer in front of me. Keeping that in mind when dealing with customers is my approach. Sure, it might be inefficient, but I didn't think it was so bad that it deserved to be laughed at from a superior position. Even if I believed I wasn't wrong, being laughed at and criticized for everything I taught was still hurtful. A month after I started training Carla, the sales results were announced. As usual, I was the top performer for that month. Everyone clapped and praised me except for Carla. She glared at me with jealousy and bit her lip in frustration. From that day on, Carla's behavior toward me worsened. When I tried to teach her product knowledge, she mocked me, saying, "You're such a nerd for remembering all that detail." She even started spreading rumors that I was using my looks to get sales. Fortunately, no one believed her, but the clear malice was shocking. Had I done something to make her hate me so much? But Carla's training period was only a month. After that, she would be on her own and wouldn't bother me anymore. At least that's what I thought. Soon enough, I realized I was wrong. Her harassment didn't stop after the training period. At first, it was minor things. My pen would disappear, or the sticky notes I left on my computer monitor would be gone. I thought I had just misplaced them or that they had blown away. But when all my schedules in the company's app were deleted, I knew it wasn't just my imagination. Other things happened too. Documents I had saved in the shared folder disappeared. Faxes and mail addressed to me ended up in the shredder bin before I could read them, and customer calls were abruptly cut off. I had been completely clueless about who was responsible, but one day, when a call was suddenly disconnected, the culprit was finally revealed. It was Carla. I found out by chance when the call suddenly got cut off. I panicked and looked around frantically. There she was with a smug grin on her face, holding an unplugged phone cord. Of course, something like this interfered with work. If a call gets abruptly cut off, it also inconveniences the customer. I asked Carla to stop harassing me, but she didn't listen at all. "Huh? Do you have any proof? Proof that I did it? Don't accuse me without evidence. It's really annoying. You're so paranoid." She sneered at me, looking up from below with that mean smile. I had seen her unplugging the phone cord, but when it came to proof, I was at a loss. She laughed at my silence. "See? You don't have any proof. Just because you have good results doesn't mean you can get cocky. For all the trouble you've caused, I hope this makes up for it." Then Carla reached into the bag beside my desk, caught my attention. I was so shocked that I just stared in disbelief as Carla pulled out my wallet, took 5 $20 bills from it, and tossed the wallet back to me. "Thanks for the bonus. If you keep this up, you can accuse me all you want," she said, laughing loudly as she walked away, leaving me stunned. I thought this harassment was too much, so I consulted my boss. However, without proof, he said it was hard to take action, and even if there was proof, if there was no malicious intent, it would be considered just a mistake. So he couldn't reprimand her too harshly. Still, my boss did caution Carla, though it didn't seem very strict. As a result, Carla resented me even more. From then on, she harassed me almost daily. No matter how many times I registered my schedule, it would be deleted, and documents I created would disappear from the shared folder. Redoing schedules and recreating documents took extra time, forcing me to work overtime more often. Since Carla started her harassment, my overtime hours had more than doubled. To avoid issues with phone calls, I told customers to email me for non-urgent matters and to call me only for urgent or important issues, citing problems with the office phone line. It was inconvenient for customers used to calling the office directly, but it was better than having calls cut off mid-conversation. As for the mail and faxes that ended up in the shredder bin, I had to check the bins several times a day. It was a waste of time, but losing a customer's trust by not receiving something they sent would take far longer to fix. Building trust is hard, but losing it takes just a moment. Carla didn't seem to understand that. I had endured her harassment for the past 5 months, but finally, something decisive happened. A few days ago, I was chosen as the main contact for a major corporation that inquired about our products. This company is one of the leading medical device manufacturers in the country, holding a top market share in the industry. If we secured a contract, it would be worth millions. Not only would I achieve this quarter's sales target, but I would also be on track for promotion. Since it was such a big account, I planned to choose a colleague I got along with for support. However, Carla's extreme enthusiasm and self-promotion convinced my boss to assign her as my support instead. I didn't think I could work well with Carla, but I thought we could both act professionally and manage to cooperate, at least on the surface. However, she provided no support at all. Instead, she sent materials for her preferred products to the client without my permission. A close colleague discreetly informed me of this. Luckily, it didn't become a significant issue. I quickly called the client contact, casually mentioning that I had sent some materials for products they might be interested in. I briefly explained the differences between the product Carla sent and the one they inquired about, identifying the client's needs in the process and arranging a detailed discussion. Thanks to my colleague's help, Carla's premature actions didn't cause major problems, and the client was receptive. On the appointment day, I introduced the products they inquired about and, based on our prior conversation, recommended other suitable products. During the discussion, I identified more of the client's needs and recommended products that better matched their desires. This is my usual sales approach. Fortunately, the client appreciated my style, enjoying the detailed pros and cons of various products and finding the best fit for their company. We narrowed it down to 3 final candidates and agreed to consult with high-ups. 2 days later, the client contact informed me they had decided to order one of the products. After discussing quantities and terms, I prepared a quote and sent it to them. The quote amount was $5 million. Carla was wide-eyed when she heard the news. Wow, that's a huge deal. I guess they went with the product I sent materials for, right? Let me see the quote. She smirked and snatched the estimate I had created. Her smile froze as she read it. That was only natural, I thought. The chosen product wasn't the one she promoted. In fact, it wasn't even among the final 3 candidates. It was like asking for a red vegetable and getting an orange bell pepper, close but not what they wanted. Carla, could you book our flights? We're scheduled for a direct meeting with the client in 2 weeks. Let's go together. When I suggested that, Carla immediately broke into a grin. I thought she had finally calmed down and felt relieved. But on the day of the meeting, I was left stranded at the airport. The meeting was scheduled for 1 p.m., and it was a 3-hour trip each way. I planned to meet Carla directly at the airport without going to the office. The meeting time was an hour before our flight's departure. However, when that time came, Carla didn't show up. I was supposed to get my ticket from her before boarding. 10 minutes passed, then 15. I tried calling her several times but received no answer. As concerned as I was about Carla's well-being, I was also worried about missing my flight. I headed to the counter, explained the situation, and asked if I could still board. That's when I discovered something shocking. My ticket hadn't been reserved. Only Carla's had been. With a pale face, I called Carla again. After several rings, she picked up. Sorry, I was busy with the boarding process and couldn't answer, Carla said nonchalantly. I confronted her immediately. Carla, they said there's no reservation under my name for this flight. What's going on? In my panic and anger, I couldn't help but raise my voice. But Carla just laughed, clearly enjoying herself. Today is about a $5 million deal. Should I bring trash along? Her words made my mind go blank. I could hear her gleeful laughter on the other end of the line before she hung up and turned off her phone, making it impossible to reach her. She had planned this from the start, but there was something Carla didn't know. The client company CEO is my brother. I put myself on standby for the next flight and called my brother, Leonardo. Until now, I had tolerated Carla's petty harassment, but I couldn't take it anymore. It was time for her to face reality. Both the next flight and the one after that were fully booked, leaving me stranded at the airport. Finally, at 1 p.m., the scheduled meeting time, not even 15 minutes had passed when my phone rang. The caller ID displayed the client. The call came much sooner than I expected. Suppressing my laughter, I answered. Hello? Where are you right now? Carla said defensively. You should know exactly where I am, Carla. You didn't reserve my ticket. Carla was momentarily speechless. Just get here quickly. The client CEO says that if you don't come, the deal is off. Carla's panicked voice echoed through the phone. In the background, I could hear familiar voices speaking in tense tones. Then, a video call invitation appeared on my phone. My brother had likely instructed her to switch over as planned, and I accepted. Carla's pale face appeared on screen, turning even greener with shock when she saw who else was there. The CEO and manager. Why are both of you with that trash at the airport? Seeing Carla's confusion made me stifle my laughter. Why were they here? The reason was simple. I had called them. The company where I work is one of several founded by my great-grandfather. His company started in retail but has now evolved into a steel group encompassing numerous subsidiary companies. From small businesses to multimillion-dollar government contracts, my family's empire has grown over generations, establishing itself as one of the most respected companies in the country. Of course, Carla had no idea about any of this. To her, I was just a lucky salesperson, an annoying competitor that needed to be eliminated at any cost. She thought that leaving me stranded at the airport was the final blow, the ultimate humiliation that would end my career for good. But what she didn't realize was that I had resources and connections beyond her imagination. When the video call was answered, Carla's expression changed instantly. Her face, once filled with malicious satisfaction, turned pale and tense upon seeing my brother sitting next to the company's manager. My brother looked at me with a subtle smile, fully aware of the situation. The manager, on the other hand, appeared uncomfortable, as if realizing he'd been misled by Carla in some way. I held back a smirk as Carla swallowed hard, trying to maintain her composure. Juliana, I didn't know that you, she stammered, struggling to justify herself. That my brother is the CEO? No, you didn't know. You were too busy thinking you were too smart to bother with details like that. Weren't you? I replied, keeping my voice calm but firm. Carla tried to force a smile, glancing around in search of an escape. My brother, always straightforward, was blunt. Carla, why isn't Juliana here? She was supposed to be leading this meeting, he asked, his voice cold. The tone I knew well. It was the tone he used when he was about to cut someone off for good. Carla fumbled, mumbling weak excuses, saying something about last-minute issues and misunderstandings. But he wasn't buying it. None of us were. I knew full well he had already investigated the entire situation, and this call was just to see how far Carla would take her lies. Misunderstanding? He repeated, leaning forward. So you're telling me it was an accident that Juliana's ticket wasn't booked? Because honestly, it seems very convenient that only you managed to board while she was left behind. Carla began to sweat. I could see her mind racing to come up with a convincing excuse, but it was too late. She was cornered, and the panic on her face was evident. The client's manager cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable, and looked at Carla with a stern expression. Had I known Juliana wouldn't be present, we would have rescheduled. Our final decision was based on her work, not the materials you sent earlier, Carla. By the way, it didn't make a good impression to receive products we didn't ask for. That was the breaking point. Carla tried to argue, but all she could do was mumble nonsense. The humiliation was written all over her face, and I knew she felt the judgmental stares in that room. Juliana, can you get here to resolve this? My brother asked, clearly impatient. The next flight is fully booked, but I'm on the standby list. I should arrive late this afternoon, I responded, holding back my laughter. He nodded, casting one final look at Carla. In the meantime, we have a lot to discuss. The message was clear. Carla was about to lose everything. As soon as the call ended, Carla bolted out of the room, probably trying to find a way to salvage the situation. But I knew there was no way out for her. I took a deep breath and prepared for what was coming next. I knew that by the time I arrived at the company, I would be the center of attention. Everyone would be talking about what happened, about how Carla had tried to sabotage me and ended up exposing herself in the worst possible way. When I finally boarded the afternoon flight, my thoughts were racing. I wondered how Carla had managed to get away with her petty schemes for so long without being stopped. For months she tormented me, tried to destroy my reputation, made me work overtime, and even made me doubt myself. But now, everything was about to change. Upon arriving at the client's headquarters, I was immediately greeted by my brother and the manager. The atmosphere was tense, and it didn't take long for Carla to reappear, now with a look of utter desperation. She tried to meet my eyes but quickly looked away, ashamed. My brother wasted no time and got straight to the point. "Carla, we're ending our partnership with you. We appreciate your time, but we cannot trust someone who tries to sabotage their colleagues. Juliana is the one responsible for this contract, and we have full confidence in her." It was a direct hit. Carla opened her mouth to protest, but he raised his hand, cutting her off. "There's nothing more to discuss. The company needs people committed to results, not childish games. You can pack your things and leave." Watching Carla walk out of that room, defeated and humiliated, was a relief I didn't know I needed so badly. After months of tension, I was finally free of her toxic presence. She had tried to bring me down, but in the end, it was her own arrogance that destroyed her. Once Carla was gone, the manager turned to me with a relieved smile. "Juliana, I apologize for any inconvenience. We want to continue this partnership with you." I simply smiled and nodded. After everything, I knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where no one would try to belittle me again. After Carla was exposed in front of everyone, I felt a momentary relief, but I knew it wasn't enough. The damage she had caused me over the past months couldn't be erased just by her getting fired. I needed to make sure she never had the chance to harm anyone else the way she had harmed me. She thought she could get away with it, but I was just getting started. In the following days, the entire company was buzzing about what had happened. Every time I walked through the halls, I could feel the curious stares and hear the hushed whispers. Some colleagues discreetly congratulated me for finally getting rid of her, while others, probably those who feared Carla or were complicit in her actions, avoided eye contact. I, however, held my head high. I knew I had won, but there was still a bitter taste in my mouth. She had wasted my precious time, jeopardized my work, and almost tarnished my reputation. I couldn't let it go without consequences. The day after her dismissal, Carla tried to contact me. At first, she sent vague messages as if nothing had happened. "Can we talk?" And it was all a big misunderstanding. When I ignored them, her messages turned bitter. "You set me up, didn't you? And this isn't over, Juliana." I laughed, deleting every single one of them. She still didn't understand that she had lost. The real revenge, however, started when I decided to expose everything she had done within the company. Not just to me but to other colleagues who, although not as severely affected as I was, had also fallen victim to her manipulation. With the support of HR and my brother, who already had a clear understanding of the situation, I gathered every suspicious email, every client complaint about receiving incorrect information, and most importantly, every record of her attempts to sabotage my work. The evidence was compiled into a detailed report, and when I presented it to the executives, it became clear that Carla wasn't just incompetent. She was a liability to any workplace. What happened next was even more satisfying than I had expected. The company decided to file a lawsuit against her for professional misconduct and reputational damage, claiming that her actions had resulted in financial losses due to waste of time and the need to redo affected contracts. Her name was placed on an industry-wide watch list, meaning that even if she tried to apply to another company in the same sector, she would have a hard time finding a new opportunity. But I wasn't done yet. I reached out to some contacts and other companies to discreetly warn them about Carla. The corporate world can be small, and soon enough, everyone was aware of her toxic reputation. Doors started closing for her one by one. A few months later, I heard rumors that she was desperately trying to work in a completely different field, struggling to escape the bad reputation she had built for herself. Meanwhile, my professional life took a completely different turn. My hard work was finally being recognized on a larger scale. I was promoted to a leadership position, exactly what Carla had tried so hard to prevent. Now, not only did I have more decision-making power, but I also had the responsibility of ensuring that situations like this never happened in the company again. My first move was to implement stricter internal security measures to prevent sabotage like the one I had endured. One afternoon, while reviewing reports, I received a notification from an unknown number on my phone. It was Carla, of course. She was trying a different approach, pleading for a chance to explain. "Please, Juliana, I have no other options. I know I messed up, but please help me. I need a recommendation for a job." I stared at the screen for a few seconds, remembering all the times I had to redo my work because of her, the humiliations she had tried to put me through, and the long nights spent fixing her mess. The only reply I sent was short and direct. "Good luck dealing with the trash you created yourself." I deleted the message without waiting for a response. Life moved on, and so did I. I learned that no matter how hard some people try to bring you down, true victory comes from persistence and intelligence. Carla was just a stumbling block, but in the end, it was she who tripped and fell. And me? I moved forward stronger, more prepared, and above all, with no fear of facing whatever challenges lay ahead. Now on to the next story. Story 2. My sister dropped her kids off at my house and demanded I babysit them while she goes on an 8-week vacation. When I threatened to report her to the police, she arranged to have me assaulted in my own home so she could take them back. Unlike real gold, kids raised as golden children never turn out to be as pure as their parents see them. Growing up, my sister always got her way. No matter how nasty or irrational she acted towards me, she got away with it all the time, and that's because she was the golden miracle child. What aided this, most likely, was also that my sister was stunningly beautiful. She had thick curly hair and light eyes, and my mom spent a lifetime comparing our looks. I have dark eyes and straight hair, and I was never as pretty as my sister. My mom loved making comments comparing us after we both became teenagers. She was constantly telling me to try and dress like my sister and asking her to teach me makeup, but my sister would also bully me and make fun of me if I ever asked her for help making myself prettier. That's how we grew up to be extremely resentful of each other. I think my sister just latched onto the worst traits that we saw in my mother, while I rejected them all. I think being put on a pedestal her whole life by my mom for simply being beautiful turned her into a rotten person who doesn't care about anyone but herself and thinks she can get away with anything just because of her looks. The way my mom compared us and put me down led to me having a lot of self-esteem issues. As an adult, I am very quiet and reserved, and some people describe me as a pushover. Recently, I have been going to therapy to try to grow a stronger spine. Even though it has been hard trying to stand up for myself in my relationships for the very first time, I feel like the way my family treated me really screwed me up as an adult, and it's hard for me to maintain any healthy friendships or romantic relationships. My sister even slept with my boyfriend in high school in senior year, and for no real reason. She never liked him and told me many times she thought he was ugly. My parents told me to let bygones be bygones when they found out what had happened. My sister wasn't even given out to, and that was a moment where I truly realized just how much they preferred her over me. The way that my dad just stood by and watched my mom emotionally get under my skin for my entire life made me feel like no man would ever stand up for me or see worth in me, and it's very hard for me to trust and connect when dating. But my entire life hasn't been completely awful because of my mom and sister, because the one upside of being the ugly sister growing up meant that I had zero social life and spent all my time studying. I ended up graduating high school with a 4.0 and landed myself a full ride at my #1 choice for university, which was great, because my mom told me the night before I started high school that she was paying for my sister's college since she was the eldest, but I would have to go to community and pay my way through it on my own. I remember sobbing and asking her why she didn't love me like she loved my sister, and she insisted that she did, but my sister deserved it more since she was her firstborn. The day I had landed my scholarship, I spent the entire day so excited to tell my parents about it. I guess part of me was kind of happy to have something that my sister didn't. My sister had spent all her time in high school partying and earning poor grades without any flack from my parents, and she was only going to college because my parents could pay for it. She wasn't even going to a very good one because her grades were so crap. So the day I rushed home to tell my family that I'd gotten a full ride to a prestigious university, I had never been so excited to share good news with my family. But when I got home and told my parents about my scholarship, All my dad said was, "Good job." And my mom didn't even look up from her phone or give me any response. Then she ignored me for the entire week after I had shared that news. I tried to ask her why she was mad at me for getting a scholarship for college, but she literally just avoided making eye contact with me and walked into the other room. It was like she literally hated me for earning my scholarship when most parents would be excited. Whatever. That's when I started to understand just how alone I was and how isolated my family wanted me to feel. I didn't understand why either. Why had my mom even had me just to spend a lifetime hating me and, in turn, making me hate myself? The day I got my scholarship turned into one of the worst days of my life as I cried myself to sleep and accepted that I would never have a family that loved me. Not like my sister did, and I despised her for it. That night, I wrote in my journal until the sun rose about what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I was tired of being this sad little girl, and I decided I was going to transform every ounce of rage I had into academic success. Instead of throwing myself a pity party and begging my parents for love and attention, I was going to redirect all my focus and energy to my studies as I always had and give myself something they never could. I was going to be stable, independent, intelligent, and educated, even though I might never be loved. So that's exactly what I did. I went to school and graduated with honors. I got a fantastic position in a company I interned for right out of college, and I've been making six figures since I turned 23. When I came home for the holidays, I would tell my family about how I was doing, and I would get random compliments from extended family members, but my own parents never went out of their way to acknowledge or congratulate me for my accomplishments. As an adult, I knew better than to tell my mom about my high position at my company or how much I was making, since I knew it would just make her resent me more. But I told my dad, and one year he even told me that he was happy for me, and it was the nicest thing either of my parents have ever told me. But even as an adult, my mom still treated me like an unwanted guest. And although I only saw them during the holidays, she would do everything in her power to get the attention off me if anybody asked me a question or directed the conversation towards me. For example, we were having Christmas dinner one year when my uncle congratulated me on a promotion I had been telling him about earlier that day. It was my second promotion within the company, and I had gotten a significant raise as well. I had been telling him about how I was looking into purchasing my first house. My uncle mentioned the promotion and the potential house, and a few other extended family members congratulated me and were pretty unexpectedly kind about the news. Another one of my cousins asked me what area I was house shopping in, and that's when my mom cut me off and said, "This is boring. Can we change the conversation?" Then, under her breath, I heard her say, "It's probably not even true anyway." Anyway, I ended up purchasing my house later that year, and when I posted about it on social media, everybody in my family liked the post except for my mom. I knew she was probably angry because my sister was having a completely opposite life experience than me. She had gone to college right out of high school, all paid for by my parents, and ended up failing out and getting pregnant by her first college boyfriend. I had a sneaking suspicion that my parents had asked her to get rid of the pregnancy, but she ended up keeping it and tried making it work with her baby daddy that she had only known for 4 months. Well, it turns out that they were completely incompatible, but I guess that didn't stop them from trying to make things work or solve their relationship by having another kid. I remember having to hold back tears when I saw her posting about having a second child, since I knew the baby was probably being born into a toxic environment since my sister was such an awful person, as was her baby dad. I had met him at the holidays, but he never even bothered to remember my name or make conversation with me, and every year he would bring home trays of food despite not bringing anything. Obviously, my sisters and my relationship did not improve as we grew up, and we basically didn't talk to each other once we were both moved out of our parents' place. We had each other on social media, and the few times where we would see each other during the holidays, my sister would make nasty comments to me about my weight or the way I was dressing. I honestly think she was just projecting because I wear a lot of designer clothes and I like cycling through my designer purses, and she would constantly ask me what fake purse I had brought this time. One year, as soon as I walked in the door for Thanksgiving, she looked me up and down and said verbatim, "I see you're dressed up again like the stuck-up bitch you are." It was so ridiculously rude and uncalled for, and she would even constantly insult me right in front of her kids using curses and everything, despite her kids being young. I don't feel bad saying that my sister is pure trash and that I didn't feel bad for anything I did after she dumped her kids on my doorstep out of nowhere one day. I had just been relaxing in my house one weekend morning after a long work week when my doorbell rang, and I was completely shocked to see my sister's 10 and 7-year-olds standing on my front porch holding overnight bags. When I asked them what they were doing here, they said their mom was going on vacation for 8 weeks and that she said I was watching them. My sister and I hadn't spoken since our family's July 4th barbecue, where she told me not to have more than one plate because she was sick of staring at my muffin top. I had no idea why she thought I would be her free babysitter for 2 months. My nephews were good, quiet kids who were obviously confused as well, so I let them inside while I started calling my sister. My sister ignored my first 10 calls, but I kept at it until she finally answered. As soon as she picked up, I said that there was no way that I was watching her kids, and that if she wasn't here to pick them up herself as soon as possible, then I would be calling CPS on her. I was literally Googling the number for Child Protective Services while I had her on speaker when she dropped a bombshell on me. Her voice got incredibly deep and scary as she blackmailed me by saying that she would call my job and inform them that I was not taking my bipolar medication and get me fired. Even though my sister was an idiot who didn't understand anything about my job, my career was the most important thing to me and I couldn't risk anyone threatening my position there. I just hung up after she said that and tried to figure out what to do next. I was going to explode from the stress. Not only could I not watch her kids, but I had a trip planned a month from then to go visit my long-distance boyfriend, Eric, all the way in Australia and meet his family for the first time. We had been dating for a while and I had been anticipating this trip all year. It was so important since he was introducing me to his mom and dad and I wanted it to go perfectly. Now my life was thrown into chaos all because of my sister and I had no idea what I was going to do. I had no idea who else to call other than my mom, and I shouldn't have been surprised that she sided with my sister just like she had literally always done. I told my mom that my sister hadn't even come to drop her own kids off and she said that they were old enough to come to my house alone anyway. My mom started guilting me and saying that my sister has done a lot for me and that I needed to be there for her just this one time since I never was. That made me lose my mind and I screamed at her at the top of my lungs and asked her to tell me one single time where my sister has been there for me or improved my life in any way. When I hung up the phone, my body was trembling with rage. I couldn't believe that after everything, my sister was still trying to manipulate my life and my mom, as always, was on her side. I sat on the couch for a while looking at my nephews. They were sitting on the floor quietly playing with some toys they brought in their bags. I knew it wasn't their fault, but the whole situation disgusted me deeply. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I couldn't let my sister get away with this. This time she had crossed every line imaginable. I got up and walked to the kitchen where I grabbed a bottle of wine. After pouring myself a large glass, I started thinking about a plan. I was tired of being trampled by her and my mom, and this time things were going to be different. I decided I was not going to watch her kids. My life was finally on the right track and I wasn't about to throw everything away because of my sister's irresponsibility. I picked up the phone and made a few calls. First, I called work and explained the situation to my boss. I told him that my sister was blackmailing me with false information about my mental health and he was very understanding. He assured me that if she did call, he knew exactly how to handle it. That took a huge weight off my shoulders. Next, I called Child Protective Services, CPS. I explained the situation, told them my sister had left her kids with me without any notice, and that she was nowhere to be found. They asked for some details and said they would come by my house to speak with me and the children. Just knowing that my sister would face legal consequences for her irresponsibility gave me a sense of justice I had never experienced before. As I waited, I started planning what I would say to my mom. I knew she would call eventually, probably trying to guilt-trip me or manipulate the situation as she always did. But this time I was ready to face her. I was tired of being the daughter who had to swallow her pride, stay quiet, and take the emotional trash my family threw at me. CPS arrived about an hour later. I talked to the social workers, explained everything, and gave them my sister's contact information. They spoke to the kids who, although confused, confirmed that their mom had gone on vacation without telling anyone. When the social workers left, they assured me they would be conducting a full investigation. I knew my sister was in serious trouble when she came back from her vacation and found not only her kids gone, but also a visit from the authorities. Finally, my mom called as expected. She was furious. "How could you do this to your sister?" She started screaming through the phone. "She trusted you, and now you're going to get her in trouble with the authorities. You've always been so selfish." I closed my eyes, trying to stay calm, but this time something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to take it anymore. Selfish. I laughed in disbelief. "You think I'm selfish? My entire life I've been treated like the trash of this family, while the golden princess could do whatever she wanted. She dropped her kids off for 2 months without even asking if I was available, without even bothering to show up, and you think that's fair? And of course you're on her side as always. You've never cared about me, my successes, or my pain. But you know what? That's over. I'm done being your doormat. Not yours, not hers. You've always been so ungrateful," she screamed back. "Your sister is going through a hard time, and all you can think about is yourself. I raised you to be a good daughter, but look what you've become. Do you really want to see your sister ruined?" I laughed again, but this time bitterly. The whole conversation sounded ridiculous. "A good daughter?" I asked. "You raised me to be a second-rate doll, someone you could compare, ridicule, and ignore while you gave everything to my sister. I was never good enough for you no matter what I did. I got a full scholarship, graduated with honors, have a successful career, and you still treat me like I'm nothing. And now you want me to take care of your precious daughter's kids while she disappears for 2 months? No way." There was tense silence on the other end of the line. I could feel the fury building inside my mom, but this time I wasn't afraid. I was finally saying what I should have said my whole life. "You want me to be the supportive sister?" I continued, my voice steady for the first time. "Then where was my sister when I needed her? Where was she when she stole my boyfriend, laughed in my face about getting a scholarship, or made horrible comments about my body? No, Mom, I'm done. You both made your choices. Now I'm making mine." She stayed quiet for a moment, and I knew the words were finally hitting her, even if she would never admit it. Finally, she let out a heavy sigh and said, "You'll regret this. Your sister will never forgive you." Well, I'm not interested in her forgiveness anymore. And if you keep defending this matter, I'm not interested in yours either. I hung up the phone before she could respond. For the first time in my life, I felt an indescribable freedom. I knew things might get worse before they got better, that my mom and sister would do everything to tear me down, but I was ready. I was finally in control of my own life, and for the first time I had done something for myself. That night I slept peacefully, knowing that in the end, the chaos my sister had brought to my doorstep would come back to haunt her. And me? I would move on with no regrets and never look back. A few weeks after everything happened, I was finally starting to feel a little peace. CPS had already contacted my sister, and I knew she was furious, but she hadn't shown up yet. She was probably trying to find a way to get out of the mess, just like she always did. Meanwhile, I was focused on moving forward, finally getting ready for my trip to Australia to visit Eric and meet his family. It was the only thing that brought me some relief in all of this chaos. Then, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, the doorbell rang. I knew it would be her. My heart was racing, but this time I was ready. When I opened the door, there she was, looking more disheveled than usual, her face twisted in anger. "You think you can ruin me?" she snapped, storming into my house without even a greeting. "What you did was unforgivable. Calling CPS, exposing my kids like that. You're a monster." I crossed my arms, keeping my posture firm. I wasn't afraid of her anymore, and now her attempts to intimidate me felt pathetic. "I'm the monster?" I replied, keeping my voice calm despite the urge to explode. "You dropped your kids at my door without asking me, without caring if I had the time or interest to take care of them while you ran off for 2 months. That's not being a mother. That's being irresponsible. And now you want to blame me for calling CPS? If anyone has been a monster in this story, it's you, not me." She trembled with rage, but I could see the surprise in her eyes. For the first time, someone was truly standing up to her, and she didn't know how to handle it. You've always been jealous, she spat. You always wanted what was mine. Now that I'm just trying to live my life, you want to destroy me. You've been like this since we were kids. You can't stand to see me happy, can you? I laughed, a bitter, cold laugh that came from years of resentment. Jealous of what? I asked, incredulous. Of someone who's never done anything for herself? Who always needed mom to fix everything? Someone who never managed to accomplish anything in life without others paying for it? Look at you, living a miserable life full of fights and regrets. Do you really think I ever wanted your life? The only thing I ever wanted was peace. Something you and mom never gave me. And now that I'm finally finding it, you want to barge in and take it away too. She was silent for a moment, trying to process my words, but instead of understanding, her anger only grew. She stepped forward as if trying to intimidate me physically. You have no idea what you're talking about, she shouted. You think just because you have a good job and a nice house, you're better than everyone else? I raised 2 kids on my own while you're off living your selfish, empty life. I stepped forward as well, meeting her gaze directly. I wasn't going to back down. Selfish. My voice was cold, measured. I'm not the one who dumped my kids like they were a burden for someone else to take care of. I'm not the one who tried to ruin my sister's life with pathetic blackmail. The truth is, and you know this, you're mad because for the first time you can't control me. For the first time, I'm living my life without caring about what you or mom think. And you know what? I'd rather be selfish and happy than live the miserable, bitter life you chose. She was speechless, but I knew she wouldn't give up that easily. Her eyes filled with tears of rage. You're going to regret this, she screamed. I'm your sister. How could you betray me like this? I will never forgive you. And when mom finds out, I cut her off, raising my hand. Enough. My voice was firm, unwavering. I don't care about your forgiveness anymore. I've spent my whole life begging for something I never got. And now I finally realize I don't need you or mom. I don't care what she thinks or does. The life I have now, I built it on my own without any help from either of you. And I will continue to live my life in peace without your drama and blackmail. She stared at me as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. And I knew in that moment that something had changed forever. She had expected me to back down like I always did. But this time there was no fear, no guilt. There was only freedom. Now, get out of my house. I pointed to the door. And don't come back. Our relationship is over. Go live your life however you want. But leave me out of it. She hesitated for a moment. But when she saw I wasn't going to give in, she turned sharply and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of that moment dissolve. As painful as it was the first time I truly felt in control of my life. After that day, we never spoke again. Not her, not my mom. The silence that followed was strange at first, but I soon realized just how liberating it was. I was finally free from the chains my family had placed on me my entire life. As for my nephews, I truly felt sorry for them. But I knew I couldn't sacrifice my own peace to fix the mess my sister had created. It wasn't their fault, but I couldn't be the solution. And even with that difficult decision, I moved on, focusing on building a life that was truly my own. Years later, I still look back and think about that final conversation with my sister. I don't feel regret. In fact, I feel immense gratitude for finally breaking free from that toxic cycle. Sometimes the peace we seek comes from cutting the ties that bind us to suffering. And I chose peace, and I've never looked back. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Christmas dinner was supposed to be peaceful this year. I had one simple wish. No drama. No yelling. No whispered guilt trips from mom. No passive-aggressive digs from my older brother, Eric. Just food, fake smiles, and the awkward but bearable silence of a family that pretends everything's fine for the sake of holiday tradition. That's all I wanted. My name's Nathan. I'm 28, and while I'm the youngest in the family, I've somehow become the only adult in the room. I've been working full-time since I was 20. Bought my own condo at 26. And this year, I brought the fancy bottle of wine to dinner like a good son. But if I had known what they were planning, what they were going to drop on me between mashed potatoes and stuffing, I never would have shown up. It all started the week before Christmas when Mom sent out the usual dinner at 6 o'clock text. I wasn't thrilled about going, but I still replied, "I'll bring dessert." I figured I'd leave after 2 hours tops, spend the night with my girlfriend, maybe watch a dumb movie, and forget whatever backhanded comments my parents tossed out over turkey. But this year wasn't like the others. This year, there was something in the air. Mom had been calling me more often, asking about my work schedule, when I'd be home, and if I was still living alone. Like she didn't already know the answer. She kept saying things like, "Don't you ever get lonely?" Or, "You have such a nice place, Nathan." I should have known something was coming, but I ignored it. I always do, because the truth is I'm used to being the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who gets called when Mom needs help with her printer or when Dad needs to borrow my Costco membership. I'm the good kid. And Eric is the storm we all pretend will pass. Eric is 30. He hasn't had a real job in over 5 years. Last I heard, he was consulting for some friend's startup that never got off the ground. He's lived at home for most of the past decade. And when he's not there, he's crashing on some friend's couch or mooching off his latest girlfriend. He's the kind of guy who always has an excuse. The job market's rigged. Nobody hires real talent anymore. I'm just waiting for the right opportunity. And my parents, God bless them, eat it up. Every time they coddle him like he's still a teenager, even though he's pushing 31. It's like they've convinced themselves that if they just keep covering for him, one day he'll magically grow up. Spoiler, he won't. So when I walked into the house on Christmas Day and saw Eric already sitting on the couch, legs up, wearing sweatpants and scrolling through TikTok like he owned the place, I sighed loudly. He didn't even look up, just muttered, "Sup?" without taking out his earbuds. Mom hugged me a little too long when I walked in. Dad gave me the usual pat on the back like I was a coworker he barely remembered. And as I sat down the box of cannoli I brought from the good Italian place, I tried not to read into the weird energy floating around the living room. Dinner started off normal enough. The food was good. Everyone complimented Mom's turkey, and I did my part to make small talk. I even laughed at one of Dad's awful jokes about airline food. For a moment it felt almost pleasant. Then Eric reached across the table and took the last scoop of stuffing without asking. I was mid-sentence. He didn't even blink. Just stabbed his fork into the dish and dumped it onto his plate. I paused, blinked once and said, "Cool. Yeah, I didn't want any more anyway." He shrugged like I was being dramatic and mumbled, "You had plenty." Mom didn't say anything. Dad looked down at his plate. It was such a small thing, but it was so Eric, that entitled, oblivious confidence that only comes from a lifetime of being told the world would wait for you to get it together. I pushed it aside. Just one more night, I told myself. Smile, nod, leave early. You're not getting sucked into this. I wish the story stopped there. I really do. But it didn't. After dinner, we were all still sitting around the table, picking at the last bits of pie, when Dad cleared his throat. He does this thing when he's about to make some grand declaration. Sits up straight, folds his hands in front of him like a school principal. I braced myself. "So," he said, "we've got some news." I looked over at Mom, who was already nodding. Eric had this smug little grin on his face like he'd been waiting for this all night. My stomach dropped. "Your brother's moving in with you," Dad said. Just like that. No build-up, no warning. "You've got that second bedroom and he needs a change of scenery. He'll stay with you for a bit. Just until he's back on his feet." I blinked. Once, twice. Thought maybe I'd misheard him. Mom leaned in like she was adding frosting to a cake. "He's just overwhelmed, Nathan. He needs support right now. Be a good sibling." I stared at them, all three of them, like I was on some hidden camera show. "He's 30, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm not his legal guardian. And you never even asked me." Eric leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes full of smug superiority. "You've got space. I won't be a problem." That's when it hit me. This wasn't a request. This was an ambush. They planned this, rehearsed it, probably waited until I was trapped at their table with a full plate in front of me so I couldn't bolt. They decided without my input that my home was now Eric's safety net. I looked down at my plate, at the half-eaten slice of pumpkin pie, at the crumbs from the roll I'd buttered just moments before. I set down my fork. Then consider this my last meal here, I said. Silence. Mom's smile faltered. Dad's eyes narrowed. Eric raised an eyebrow. I'm not doing this, I said. You don't get to decide what happens in my home. You don't get to dump your mess onto me because you're tired of cleaning it up. I've worked too hard for too long to carry someone who refuses to walk. Eric rolled his eyes. Wow, real mature, Nathan. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and without another word, I walked out. The air outside was freezing, but I didn't care. I needed to get out before I said something I'd regret. My phone buzzed 3 times before I even made it to my car. All from Mom. I didn't answer. I sat in the driver's seat, keys in hand, heart pounding. I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And I was right, because what came next changed everything. I didn't answer their calls that night or the next day. I needed space, time to think. Because what they did, it wasn't just tone deaf. It wasn't just manipulative. It was a betrayal of the quiet boundary I'd spent years trying to hold. The boundary that said, I'll be the good son. I'll show up. I'll do my part, but I won't be your backup plan. I won't be Eric's babysitter. And I definitely won't be his landlord. By the time New Year's rolled around, I still hadn't heard a real apology. Just 3 texts from Mom that all read like recycled messages. Eric is struggling. Nathan, you're his only hope. We were just trying to help. Don't be so dramatic. That last one hit harder than I expected. I'd spent years swallowing my pride for this family, ignoring the fact that Eric was always the favored one, the baby even though he was older, the one who got praised for the bare minimum, while I quietly carried the weight of everything they didn't notice. He dropped out of college. Mom said he was too creative for structure. He got fired from a sales job for not showing up. Dad said that manager didn't appreciate raw talent. He crashed my car when we were in our early 20s. Mom blamed me for letting him borrow it unsupervised. Meanwhile, I graduated, got a decent job, paid off my debt, bought a condo, kept my head down and didn't ask for help once. And they called me dramatic. I went back to work on January 2nd and tried to refocus. New quarter, new project deadlines. But the family stuff buzzed in the back of my mind like a low-grade headache. I didn't want to deal with it, but I also knew I couldn't avoid them forever. The first bomb dropped that Friday. I got home from work around 6:30 p.m. It had been raining all day, and all I wanted to do was throw on sweatpants and watch something mindless. Instead, I saw a pair of unfamiliar sneakers by the front door, a duffel bag slumped against the wall, and Eric sitting on my couch eating chips, watching my Netflix. What are you doing here? I said, my voice sharp. Eric looked up like I was the one who had intruded. Mom said you'd come around eventually. Figured I'd get settled before the semester starts. What semester? I blinked. He grinned. I enrolled in an online coding boot camp. Starts next week. Takes 6 months. I need a quiet place to study. I felt something inside me snap. You broke into my apartment? I asked. He had the audacity to laugh. Mom had your spare key. You left it at their house, remember? I remembered. I'd given it to Mom last year during a plumbing issue just in case. I never thought she'd use it like this. You don't live here, Eric. He leaned back, arms behind his head. I do now. I didn't yell. I didn't slam the door. I just stared at him, then walked into my bedroom, locked the door, and sat on the edge of my bed, hands trembling. I texted Mom, "Did you give Eric my spare key?" The 3 dots appeared almost immediately. He needed a place. He said you were being difficult. I assumed you'd calm down. He's family, Nathan. Family helps each other. I didn't reply. I just sat there silent, numb, watching the foundations of what little respect I had left crumble away. Over the next few days, Eric made himself comfortable. He left dishes in the sink, used my shampoo, ate my groceries, slept in until noon, then complained he was too tired to cook. Every time I brought up the fact that he was not supposed to be there, he deflected. It's temporary. I'll clean up later. Stop being so uptight, man. I reached out to my parents again. I kept it calm, measured. I need you to tell Eric to leave. This isn't okay. Dad replied with a single sentence. We're disappointed in how selfish you're being. Selfish. That word echoed in my head every time I came home to find Eric using my PS5 or ordering takeout on my couch or hosting one of his friends. Loud guys in their 30s who still acted like frat boys. One night, I came home to find Eric blasting music in the living room. I walked in, saw my favorite whiskey bottle, one I'd been saving for a special occasion, half gone on the coffee table. Eric and two of his friends were laughing like it was a bar. I didn't say a word. I just turned around and left. Drove to a diner down the block, ordered pancakes at 9 p.m., and sat in the corner booth staring at the wall. I was so angry I couldn't speak. Not because of the whiskey, not because of the noise, but because it felt like my own home wasn't mine anymore. And the worst part, my parents acted like I was the problem, like I was failing some unspoken test of loyalty by not embracing their golden child with open arms. The final straw came 2 weeks later. I was at work, buried in meetings, when I got a call from my landlord. "Hey, Nathan," he said, his voice unusually tense. "Just wanted to confirm. You gave your brother permission to speak on your behalf." My blood ran cold. "What?" "He called about breaking the lease. Said he was handling the move out. Wanted to know what kind of notice we needed to give." I stood up from my desk, heart racing. "I didn't authorize anything. Don't talk to him. Only speak to me." He apologized, said he thought it was weird. I thanked him and hung up. I immediately called Eric. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. Then I got the text. Figured it was time for a fresh start. That place is way too small for both of us anyway. I'm looking at this loft in Midtown. Perfect setup for my startup idea. If I get approved, I'll just have them transfer the lease. Shouldn't be a big deal. I stared at my screen in disbelief. He was trying to take over my apartment, my lease, my home. I left work early that day. When I got back, he was in the kitchen frying something like it was a Sunday morning. "You seriously tried to get me kicked out?" I said. He didn't even flinch. "Chill. It was just a question. Thought you were going to move in with Sarah anyway." "We broke up," I snapped. He blinked. "Oh, that sucks. Guess that works out for me, then." I stood there, hands clenched, every muscle in my body screaming to explode. But I didn't. I just turned and walked into my room, locked the door, and sat down. This wasn't just disrespect anymore. It was war. I emailed my landlord, explained everything. Thankfully, he was understanding. Said he wouldn't speak to Eric again and that no changes would be made without my written consent. But I knew something had changed that day. A line had been crossed, and I couldn't unsee it. That night, I lay awake in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Eric snore through the wall. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to argue anymore. I wasn't going to beg my parents to understand. I wasn't going to try to convince anyone of anything. I was going to show them. If they wanted to treat me like the villain for protecting what I'd built, fine. Then they were about to find out what the villain was really capable of. But before I could put any plans into motion, something happened that made everything 10 times worse. Something I never saw coming. Something that pushed this entire mess beyond the point of no return. And it started with a letter in my mailbox. The envelope was plain. No logo, no return address, just my name typed in block letters and my unit number. I found it wedged between a furniture catalog and a takeout flyer when I got home from work the next evening, still fuming over Eric's latest stunt. He'd used my Amazon account to order a $200 mechanical keyboard, claiming it was an investment in his coding future. The worst part? He used my saved card and thought I wouldn't notice. But this letter, this was something else. I opened it right there in the lobby, my fingers stiff from the cold. Inside was a neatly folded page with a simple message. "Your brother's credit is shot. He listed your address on 3 loan applications. Call me Mark." At first, I thought it was a scam, some junk collector fishing for a bite, but my gut said otherwise. I typed the number into Google. Mark was real, a regional loan officer from a small credit union. I called him. Mark speaking. Hi. My name's Nathan. I got a letter from you about Eric. There was a pause, then a sigh. Yeah, I figured you might not know. Look, I'm not trying to cause drama here, but your brother listed you as a cohabitant and an emergency contact on 3 separate applications last month. He used your apartment address. Said you were co-signing on a business loan. My stomach flipped. I didn't co-sign anything. I figured. His application was sketchy. It got flagged. But your name came up enough times that I thought you deserved a heads up. Thank you, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. That was the moment everything came into focus. This wasn't just a case of Eric being lazy. He was using me. My name, my address, my life. Like it was a grab bag of free resources he could exploit. And my parents, either they were willfully blind or they knew and just didn't care. That night, I sat in my car long after I pulled into the garage. Just sat there, hands on the wheel, staring into the dark. I'd hit my limit. But here's the thing about rock bottom. It's quiet, cold, clarifying. You stop hoping people will change. You stop bending to make room. You stop clinging to the illusion that love means tolerating betrayal. And once you let that go, you finally have room to build. The next day, I took the first step. I took a sick day from work. Not to rest, but to reclaim my space. I called a locksmith. Eric was still asleep, probably recovering from whatever late-night live stream he'd been yelling at in the living room. I tiptoed past his door, let the locksmith in, and had the locks changed by noon. Then I waited. I didn't pack up his things. I didn't scream. I didn't even leave a note. I just sat in my living room. Lights off, phone charged, door locked. At 3:12 p.m., Eric returned loudly. The handle jiggled, then rattled harder. Yo, what the Nathan? I didn't answer. He knocked, then pounded, then started shouting. You changed the locks? Are you serious? I let him yell. Let him try calling me 5 times in a row. I watched the screen flash his name, then dim again. I didn't pick up. Finally, I slid my phone under the door. Wait. No, I sent a text. One message. You have 24 hours to get your stuff. I'll leave it bagged in the hallway. After that, it's getting donated. He screamed, called me every name he could think of. But I didn't care. I felt lighter. He left after 20 minutes of pointless rage. The next morning, I bagged his stuff, dumped it all into 4 garbage bags, set them outside the door, and locked it behind me. He came by later that day, didn't say a word, just gave me a look like I'd ruined his life. And maybe I had, but I wasn't sorry. That was the last time I saw him for a while, but the fallout wasn't over. Mom called, furious. You humiliated your brother. He tried to steal my lease and use my name for a loan. He was just trying to get his life together. He's 30, Mom. I'm not his launch pad. You're turning your back on family. I took a deep breath. No, I'm just done being used. Dad sent a silent thumbs down emoji. That was his way of disapproval these days. Efficient. They stopped calling after that. And that was the beginning of the silence. I didn't realize how heavy their constant noise had been until it was gone. The first few weeks were strange. I'd wake up expecting a new problem, a passive-aggressive message, a guilt trip, but none came. Instead, I found space. I started working out again. Nothing fancy, just early morning jogs and cheap dumbbells in the bedroom. I rediscovered the quiet joy of making dinner for one. I read books without being interrupted, watched movies on my terms. I even picked up freelance work, something I'd been too burned out to do before. A friend of mine ran a small marketing agency and asked if I could help with copywriting. I said yes. Before long, that side hustle became a consistent source of income. I was saving more, sleeping better, smiling without forcing it. I didn't need validation. I didn't need applause. I just needed peace. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't revenge. It was recovery. One evening in late February, I got a text from my cousin Molly. Hey, just a heads up. Your brother's staying with Aunt Linda now. Says you kicked him out for no reason. Thought you should know. I laughed. Not bitterly, not sarcastically, just amused. Eric hadn't changed. He just moved the problem down the road. But that was no longer my problem. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying his weight. Then one Saturday morning, something unexpected happened. I got a knock at the door. Not a pounding, angry knock like Eric's, but a quiet, almost hesitant tap. When I opened it, I saw my mom, alone, holding a brown paper bag. "I brought cannolis," she said, eyes tired. "Like you did last Christmas." I didn't move, didn't say anything, just stood there. She sighed. "Can we talk?" I let her in, sat across from her at the table. She looked around. "It's cleaner than I expected." I didn't laugh, didn't offer small talk. "I didn't know about the loans," she said finally. "Not until after. He told me you made it up." "Of course he did." She rubbed her temples. "I don't know what to believe anymore. I just know something broke. And I think we did it." I didn't respond. She looked at me with eyes I barely recognized. "You've always been the strong one, the quiet one. I think we mistook that for not needing anything." "I needed respect," I said. "That's it." She nodded. "I'm sorry." And for the first time in my life, I believed she meant it. We didn't hug, we didn't cry, but we sat at the table and ate cannoli in silence. And somehow that was enough, at least for now. But not everyone was done playing games, because a week later, I got an email from a name I hadn't seen in years. Eric's ex-girlfriend. Subject line, "You should know what he's planning next." And what she sent me, it changed everything. The subject line hit me like a cold gust of wind. "You should know what he's planning next." It was 10:46 p.m. on a Thursday, and I had just finished reviewing some freelance copy for a small skincare brand. I was sipping lukewarm tea, feeling the satisfying tiredness that comes from a day well spent. Then that notification popped up on my laptop, and everything froze. I stared at the name, Vanessa Cabrera, Eric's ex. They dated years ago, back when he still occasionally held down jobs for more than a month. I barely knew her, just a soft-spoken girl with a half smile and tired eyes. We met at a few family barbecues and once at Mom's birthday dinner. She always seemed too smart for Eric, too patient, and too quiet. I hadn't heard her name in years. Honestly, I'd forgotten all about her until now. I clicked. "Hey Nathan, I know this is out of the blue. I wasn't sure if I should say anything, but I figured you had the right to know. Eric's been staying with my cousin Tina for the past few weeks. Don't ask, long story. I didn't realize this until I bumped into him at a cafe near her place. We talked briefly. He thinks I don't know what he's doing, but I do. He's planning to file a fake report against you. Something about housing fraud or abuse, whatever he thinks will discredit you. I heard him bragging about how he still has access to your place digitally and how he's going to turn the tables. Please be careful. I'm sorry for everything, Vanessa." I read it twice, then again. My stomach dropped. It wasn't over. Somehow, Eric still thought he had leverage. Or maybe he was just that desperate. But what struck me wasn't the threat. It was the detail. He still has access digitally. I jumped up from the couch and grabbed my phone. Opened every smart home app. One had my Wi-Fi router, my smart lock, the Nest thermostat, even my grocery delivery app. There it was. Eric, logged in under my old guest access profile. The same one I'd set up when he first showed up in December. I'd forgotten all about it. He could see when I came home what groceries I ordered, whether I was away for the weekend. I revoked every access, changed every password, set up two-factor on every device I owned, reset the entire Wi-Fi system, and replaced the digital lock with a manual one the next morning. But I didn't stop there. Something inside me clicked. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was done playing defense. This wasn't about setting boundaries. This was about reclaiming everything he tried to take and making sure he never did it to anyone else again. I started digging. Phase 1. Information. If Eric wanted to start a fire, fine. I'd bring a storm. First, I called Vanessa. To my surprise, she picked up. "Hi, Nathan," she said quietly. "I figured you might call." "Thank you for the warning," I said. "You didn't have to do that." She hesitated. "Yeah, I did. We talked for an hour." She told me stories I never knew. How Eric lied about money, used her credit card without asking, Once forged her signature to sign up for a gym membership he never paid for. When she confronted him, he played victim, said she was trying to undermine his growth. It was a pattern, the same pattern he pulled with me, with our parents, with everyone. He knows how to twist things, she said. But he leaves trails. I took notes, got names, dates, even a few screenshots. She still had texts where he admitted to lying, to faking applications, to playing the system. Then I got serious. Phase 2, documentation. I requested my credit report clean, thankfully, but I flagged everything, froze my credit, and reported the attempted loan application to 3 financial institutions. They confirmed what I feared. Eric had used my name and address as an alternate contact in multiple places. I documented it all, every email, every attempt, every message. I even requested security footage from my apartment building for the dates he tried to break the lease. Sure enough, there he was, buzzing in strangers, hosting parties, talking loudly about renovations to his guests. Then I pulled the texts from my phone. Screenshots of Eric admitting he was looking at other places, handling the lease, and even that line, "That place is way too small for both of us anyway." I filed it all into a folder. Operation No More Eric. But I still needed more. Phase 3, leverage. I reached out to Molly, my cousin, who first tipped me off about Eric crashing at Aunt Linda's. She was eager to help. "You're finally taking him down?" she said, almost gleeful. "Good. He's been leeching off us since New Year's. Aunt Linda can't say no to him. She gives him money, drives him around, even lent him her spare car. Does she know about the loans? No. She thinks he's saving up to launch some VR marketing company, whatever that means. Would you be willing to talk to her carefully?" "I'll do better," she said. "I'll record him." "What?" "He talks to himself, Nathan. All the time. Monologues like he's in a movie. I'll leave my phone on next time we're in the car." I didn't want to put her in a risky spot, but she insisted. Sure enough, 3 days later, she sent me a voice memo. It was short but clear. Eric's voice. "I'm going to make Nathan look unstable. He thinks he's so righteous. Wait till the landlord gets that anonymous tip. I'll bury him in paperwork. He'll fold." I sat in stunned silence. This wasn't petty anymore. This was malicious, intentional, calculated. But he didn't know something I'd only just realized myself. I had allies now. People he burned. People tired of being collateral damage in his drama. Vanessa, Molly, even the landlord, who had quietly filed a complaint with the city after Eric's fake move-out stunt. And I had options. I reached out to a friend of mine from college, Jared, who worked in digital forensics and cyber law. Not a lawyer, but close enough. I told him everything. He listened carefully, then said, "If he tries to report you for anything false, housing fraud, abuse, whatever, that's grounds for defamation if it impacts your job or credit. And if he accessed your accounts without permission, that's identity fraud. What if I don't want to sue? Then don't. But build the case anyway. Get the leverage. You never know when you'll need it." So I kept building. Screenshots, logs, statements from neighbors, voice memos, emails. A full dossier. But I wasn't just collecting evidence. I was planning a message. Because Eric didn't fear consequences. He thrived in shadows, manipulated when no one was looking. So my plan was simple: turn on the light. The perfect opportunity came in March, Mom's birthday. Every year she insisted on a family dinner. Small, private, just the 4 of us. This year, she reserved a table at her favorite restaurant. Something cozy, candlelit, and way too fancy for the way we all felt about each other. First, I thought about skipping it. But then I realized it was the perfect stage to set the trap, to drop the bomb, to end it once and for all. And I knew exactly how to do it. Because the real revenge, it wasn't about screaming or lawsuits. It was about finally holding up the mirror and letting him see what everyone else already knew. That his free ride was over, that he wasn't the victim, and that this time he messed with the wrong brother. So, I made my reservation, rehearsed my words, and waited. Because the dinner that changed everything was about to begin. Dinner was set for 7 p.m. sharp. It was a warm Friday night in early April, the kind that usually brings a quiet sense of relief. but I felt none. My hands were still, my voice calm, but inside me something simmered. A long brewing resolve that had sharpened over months of betrayal, guilt trips, and gaslighting. Tonight was no longer about Mom's birthday. It was about showing every person at that table, especially Eric, who I really was. The restaurant was small and upscale, the kind Mom liked for special occasions. Low lighting, dark leather booths, a quiet hum of classical music in the background. They had already arrived when I got there. Mom wore her usual pearl earrings. Dad looked bored and slightly uncomfortable in a jacket. And Eric, of course, dressed like he was headed to a game night. Black hoodie, joggers, and that same arrogant smirk. I walked in and sat down with a simple, "Evening." Mom looked up with a polite smile. "I'm glad you came." Eric didn't even look at me, just muttered, "Took you long enough." I poured myself some water, pretending not to hear. The waiter came and took our orders. Small talk followed. Mom talked about her garden. Dad mentioned something about refinancing the car. Eric, true to form, started rambling about his new tech venture. "I've got this lead on a crypto-backed platform," he said, eyes darting between us. "It's next-gen stuff. Disruptive." I nodded thoughtfully. "And how are you funding it?" He raised an eyebrow. "Got a few sources. People who believe in my vision." I almost laughed, but I didn't. Not yet. Dinner arrived. Forks clinked. Mom gushed over the wine. And just when things started to feel almost normal, I leaned back and said, "I got an interesting email last month from Vanessa." Eric's fork paused mid-air. "She told me about the loans," I continued. "The fake reports you were planning using my name, my apartment, my credit." The air at the table changed instantly. Mom's smile evaporated. Dad stiffened. Eric froze. "She's lying," he said. "She recorded you, Eric?" I replied, calm as ever. "Talking about filing a false report, admitting to forging my info, even boasting about how you'd turn the tables." Mom gasped softly. "Eric, she edited it," he snapped. "That's not real. You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I do," I said, placing my phone on the table. "Would you like to hear the full clip? Or maybe see the screenshots or the statements I collected? The loan attempts in my name? The footage from my building when you tried to fake the lease transfer?" His mouth opened, then closed. The smirk slipped. "I didn't do anything illegal," he muttered, eyes shifting toward Mom. "You tried," I said. "And if I'd been one day slower, you might have succeeded." "Nathan," Mom said quietly, "maybe we should discuss this." "No," I cut in. "We're not brushing this aside. Not this time. He put me at risk. My home, my credit, my job." Dad cleared his throat. "Son, maybe it was just a mistake." "It wasn't," I said. "But it doesn't matter, because I've already reported everything." Eric looked up, eyes wide. "What?" "I filed a full report with the FTC, the police fraud unit, and every financial institution he listed me on. I gave them the audio, the documents, the timeline, everything." "You're bluffing," he said, voice low. "Try me." He shot up from his chair. "You're ruining my life over nothing. You ruined your own life the moment you tried to steal mine," I said, still seated. He looked at Mom. "Aren't you going to say something?" She looked pale, quiet, and for the first time I saw doubt in her eyes. Real doubt. "You said he was being paranoid," she said softly. "You told me Nathan locked you out because he was unstable." He was." "Then why are there 3 loans tied to his address?" Eric froze. "Why is there a recording of you bragging about manipulating the system?" Still frozen, she turned to me. "What happens now?" I looked at Eric. "That depends on him. If he walks away now, quietly, I won't press criminal charges. But if I get even a whisper that he's trying to sabotage me again, I'll hand over everything to the DA." Eric looked like he was going to explode. He clenched his fists, his face went red, but in the end he just stormed out. Mom started to follow him, then stopped. She looked at me with this strange, unfamiliar expression. Shame, maybe even respect. Dad didn't say a word. We sat in silence. Just the three of us, then two. Eventually, I stood up. "I'll pay for my meal," I said. "But I'm not staying for cake." Mom didn't argue. I left that night with the weight of years off my shoulders. Eric tried a few more stunts after that. Texted me vague threats, tried to spin the story with extended family, but it didn't stick because I had receipts and now everyone knew who he really was. Molly shared the story discreetly with the rest of the cousins. Vanessa, surprisingly, posted her own account of what she'd endured on Facebook. And Aunt Linda? She cut him off completely after learning what he'd done with the loan attempts. Eric went quiet after that. Word was he left the state. Mom still calls sometimes. She's softer now, gentler. She never defends Eric anymore. And while I haven't fully rebuilt my relationship with her, I don't slam the door shut either. As for me, I'm thriving. I moved to a better apartment, got promoted at work, turned that freelance gig into a small business, even started dating again. Nothing serious, but healthier than anything I had before. Because I learned something through all of this. Sometimes family isn't sacred. Sometimes it's a weight you carry until you finally decide to put it down. And when you do, you don't just reclaim your space, you reclaim yourself. My brother tried to steal my life, so I gave him a front row seat to watch me build one without him. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My name's Elias. I'm 32. And if you ever want to test how much resentment a person can carry and still smile through it, try being the regret your mother toasts to at her retirement party. It happened last Friday. My mother, Denise, was finally retiring after nearly 4 decades in the school district. Elementary vice principal turned local legend, as the paper once called her. Everyone was there. Former colleagues, students, family, neighbors, and of course my older brother, Grant, the golden boy. He was the star athlete turned financial advisor with a wife, 2 kids, a golden retriever, and apparently my mother's undivided pride. Growing up, Grant was always the responsible one, the leader, while I was the kid who got too quiet in crowds, the one who asked questions at dinner that made people shift uncomfortably. I was the one who didn't follow the script. No sports, no big career moves, no settling down in the suburbs. I worked in digital media, remote, freelancing mostly. I traveled sometimes, too much. To them, I was the weird one, the mistake. The event was held at a local golf club ballroom, complete with a buffet, string quartet, and a slideshow that played softly in the background. Pictures of her with students, teachers, PTA meetings, Christmas parties, and award nights. Grant and I were featured in some photos too, mostly from when we were kids. But every time my face appeared, the slide seemed to change just a little faster. I knew the tone of the night the moment I walked in. My mom greeted me with a kiss on the cheek and said, "You clean up nice, Elias, for once." Then she turned to greet the mayor. Grant gave me a handshake and an overly rehearsed, "Glad you made it, little bro." Like I hadn't flown in from Barcelona just to be there. The speeches started halfway through dinner. Her old colleagues said kind things. Some funny stories, light applause. Then Grant took the mic. "It's rare that a mother can do so much for so many," he began, "and still find the time to raise 2 incredible sons." He paused. "Well, one anyway." The room burst into polite laughter. He looked over at me like it was all in good fun. I sipped my water. When Mom finally took the stage, her hair was perfectly pinned, her floral blazer matching the napkins. She smiled warmly at the crowd. "I've spent my life trying to make a difference," she said, "to shape young lives. And I'm proud to say I raised 2 amazing children." She paused. Her lips curled into that knowing smirk I hated as a kid. "And 1 regret." The audience roared. Grant laughed the loudest, nearly clapping. "At least she's finally saying it out loud," he called out. And I just smiled, because I came prepared. See, this wasn't my first humiliation. This wasn't even the 10th. Every family holiday had become a quiet exercise in being tolerated. Christmas. I got a regifted mug and a silent seat at the table. Last Thanksgiving. They forgot I was allergic to walnuts and put pecan pie at every place setting but mine. My birthday this year. A group text at 11 p.m. with 1 thumbs up emoji from Grant. But this night was mine. I had brought a small gift bag. Plain blue paper, nothing flashy. and left it under the podium before dinner. No one had noticed. I walked up slowly, took the mic from her hands as she beamed at me like I was still 6 and about to recite something stupid for attention. "Then you won't mind," I said into the mic, "if I share my gift first." The room quieted, more out of politeness than curiosity. I reached into the bag and pulled out a small remote. "I thought I'd contribute to the slideshow," I said casually, clicking once. The screen flickered. The photo of her holding a student's award disappeared, replaced by another. A scan of an email from 5 years ago. My dad's name was in the subject line and a message beneath it. Short, cold, damning. "Denise, I can't keep doing this. You lied. You said he was mine, but the test was clear. Elias isn't." The room gasped. My father, or the man I had called my father for 32 years, dropped his fork. My mother's face drained completely. Grant stopped laughing. I clicked again. The next slide came up, a PDF of the paternity test. Dated, signed, certified. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I just watched the expressions shift. Some confusion, some horror, some people whispering already. I could feel every pair of eyes crawling across me like ants. And I just stood there, still holding the mic, breathing in the silence like fresh air. Because this wasn't just about genetics. It was about the 32 years I spent chasing scraps of validation from a woman who resented my existence and a family who treated me like a punchline. This was just the beginning. But I paused there, letting it sink in, letting everyone, including the people who laughed minutes ago, see the full weight of what had just been dropped into the room. And my father, his hands were shaking. He looked at my mom with disbelief, anger, betrayal, and then he opened his mouth. But before he could say a word, I turned off the mic and clicked to the next slide. The next slide wasn't a document. It was a photo, an old one, grainy, scanned from a physical print. It was a picture of my mom in her 20s sitting on a beach towel with a man no one in that room had ever seen before. Not my dad, not anyone they'd know. But I knew who he was. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring in the picture. She was smiling too wide, hair windblown, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. And the man had his arm around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder like he belonged there. Like this wasn't just some summer fling. And dated in the corner, March 1991, 11 months before I was born. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I just let the image sit there on the screen like an open wound. The crowd had fallen silent. Even the waitstaff stopped moving. Forks were midair. A single champagne flute tipped and clinked softly against the floor, but nobody looked away from the screen. My father, Steve, stood up so suddenly his chair toppled over behind him. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Finally, he spoke. "Who is that?" My mother said nothing. She hadn't moved. Not an inch. Steve stepped forward, eyes locked on the photo like it was a ghost. "Denise, who is that man?" Still, she said nothing. So I answered, calm and clear. His name was Eric. He was a substitute teacher at her school for a semester. They kept in touch. She told him I was his. "And then she told you I was yours." My father's head turned toward me like it physically hurt to hear. "How do you know all this?" I pulled a folded letter from my jacket. "He wrote this to her back in 2001. She kept it. It was in the attic. I found it last year when I was helping her move boxes. I handed it to him. He didn't reach for it at first. Then slowly, like he didn't trust his own limbs, he took it, opened it, and started to read. As he did, his expression changed from confusion to pain, from pain to something else entirely. "You knew?" he asked, still looking at her. "You've known all this time, and you let me believe." His voice broke. "You let me raise him, pay for everything, sit through this." He gestured toward the party, the cake, the guests. "Steve." My mom finally tried to speak, but her voice cracked like glass. "You lied to me for 32 years. His voice was louder now. "And you let our son, no, your son, grow up thinking he was the problem." I glanced at Grant. He looked pale, like he was finally doing the math in real time, like everything he'd ever believed had just twisted sideways. He stood up. "Wait, what is this, Elias?" What are you saying? I turned to him. I'm saying you spent your whole life lording over me like I was some burden, some stain on the family. But turns out I was never really part of it. Not the way you were. Not to her. I was just a reminder of something she tried to bury. Grant opened his mouth, then shut it again. No comeback this time. No punchline. Just silence. I took a step forward and looked out across the crowd. You all toasted her for being this pillar of the community, this hero of education. But here's the truth. She built her image by erasing parts of her life she didn't want to acknowledge, starting with me. The room was dead quiet. Someone near the back, one of her teacher friends, stood up and quietly walked out. Then another. I clicked the remote again. This time the screen went black. No more slides, just me holding the mic. I didn't come here to ruin a party, I said softly. I came here to end a lie. Then I set the microphone down on the podium, walked to my seat, and sat down. The tension didn't break. It stretched thick and quiet and unbearable. Steve was still holding the letter, staring at the paper like it was an X-ray of everything he hadn't wanted to see. My mom still hadn't moved. And then, after what felt like an entire minute, she finally spoke. You had no right, she said, her voice low and shaky. I turned to her. No right? You stood up in front of everyone and said you raised 2 amazing children and 1 regret. You made this public. I just gave them the context. She looked at me, then really looked, and for the first time in my life, I saw something other than irritation or disappointment in her eyes. I saw fear. Not of me, but of everything falling apart in real time. Her reputation, her marriage, her perfectly manicured legacy. This isn't fair, she whispered almost to herself, and that made me laugh. Fair? You think any of this was fair? But before I could say more, my dad dropped the letter, looked at both of us, and said something I'll never forget. Get out. At first I thought he meant me, but he didn't even glance my way. He was staring directly at her. The room was so quiet. I could hear the slow hum of the air conditioning vents overhead, like background noise in a suspense movie just before something snaps. Steve's voice had cut through the air like a blade. Get out. He said it again, louder this time. Not shouted, just sharp. Final. Denise's mouth opened like she was about to protest. But then she caught something in his eyes. Something cold. Something that told her this wasn't a fight she was going to win. Not here. Not in front of all these people. Steve, she started, taking a cautious step toward him. No, he said, backing away. You lied to me for 3 decades. You let me believe. You let me believe he was my son. He gestured to me without looking. And I treated him like one, even when you didn't. A murmur rippled through the guests. A few more people gathered their things and started quietly slipping out. Some out of discomfort, others maybe out of embarrassment for having clapped and laughed minutes earlier. She turned slow, as if remembering the eyes on her now, and she forced a smile. The same tight, strange smile she used when a parent accused her of favoritism at school board meetings. Everyone, I think this has all just been. Don't, I said, standing again. Don't gaslight the room now. You don't get to spin this. You lied to Dad. You erased me from every family celebration in one way or another. And you were perfectly fine letting Grant treat me like a stray dog you let in the house out of pity. Grant flinched at that, but he didn't interrupt. Steve looked at me then, for the first time since the slides. He wasn't angry, not at me, just broken, hollow. His face looked older than it had an hour ago. And you? He said to me slowly. When did you find out? I took a breath. Last year, just before Thanksgiving. I found the test and the letter in a storage box she asked me to move. I confronted her in private. She told me it didn't matter. Said, you're still lucky we raised you. Like I was some stray she adopted out of charity. He shook his head slowly, almost in disbelief. And you didn't tell me? I looked down, then back at him. I didn't know how. I thought about it 100 times. I wanted to scream it some nights, but every time I came close, I just see how happy you were to still believe it. How much it would break you. His shoulders slumped. And then quietly he whispered, It still broke me. My throat tightened, but I didn't look away. Across the room, Grant suddenly stood up straighter like something had clicked in his brain. He pointed at me. You planned this. You waited until her retirement party to drop this bomb. You wanted to humiliate her. You wanted to ruin everything. I turned to him slowly. You mean kind of like how she called me her regret in front of 100 people? While you laughed. That kind of humiliation. His jaw tightened. You think I ruined the night? I asked. No, I revealed the truth. You just don't like how it made you look. Grant took a step forward. You could have done this quietly, privately. But no, you wanted the show, the drama. I nodded. You're right. I didn't want it public because every ugly thing you two have done to me has always come with a smile and a microphone. A backhanded comment at a birthday, a toast with a dig, a wedding speech where I was the punchline. For once, I wanted the truth to be the loudest voice in the room. He didn't respond. His fists were clenched, but he didn't move. Behind us, the cake table still sat untouched. One of the balloons tied to the chair had deflated slightly, drooping like even it didn't want to be part of the party anymore. Denise finally walked toward the exit, one slow step at a time, clutching her purse like a shield. She didn't say anything to anyone. Not even Grant, not to me, not even to Steve. And then she was gone. The door closed behind her with a soft, echoing click. My father turned to the remaining guests, just a few dozen now, quiet and uncertain. Thank you all for coming, he said flatly. The party's over. People didn't argue. They just started gathering their things and filtering out. Some gave me sympathetic glances. A few looked at me like I was radioactive. I didn't care. Grant walked out without a word, his wife trailing behind him, looking more confused than upset, probably wondering what secrets her marriage might be hiding. And then it was just me and Steve and a few waiters in the distance cleaning up spilled drinks and plates of half-eaten salmon. He finally sat down again slowly, rubbed his forehead like it was all too much. I sat across from him. You okay? I asked cautiously. He didn't look up. I don't know. There was a long pause. I'm not your biological son, I said gently. But I never wanted that to matter to you. I wanted you to know me. See me the way you saw Grant. His hand twitched. Then he looked at me. Really looked. And he asked the question I'd always feared but somehow expected. So, what do you want from me now, Elias? I looked at him across the table. The space between us weighed down by 3 decades of silence, missteps, and all the things neither of us ever said. My fingers tapped the side of my water glass as I thought about his question. What do you want from me now, Elias? It wasn't an easy question. A year ago, I would have said I wanted an apology. Some admission that the way I'd been treated all my life wasn't normal or fair. That being left out of family photos, plans, and holidays wasn't a coincidence. That the way I was constantly compared to Grant and always found lacking wasn't just in my head. I would have wanted him to say he was sorry for never noticing. But sitting there now, with the wreckage of my mother's retirement party still echoing in the air and the slideshow still paused on a black screen, something had shifted. I didn't want him to apologize for her anymore. I didn't want him to explain her. I didn't even need him to defend me. So, I said the first thing that came honestly. Nothing. His brow furrowed. Nothing. I don't want anything, I said quietly but firmly. Not money, not sympathy, not a redo. I'm not here to be adopted retroactively. I needed the truth to come out. I needed you to see it. All of it. He looked at me, searching for something in my face. Maybe anger, maybe bitterness. He probably expected a speech about how I wanted a relationship or how we could rebuild. Instead, I just sat there with my hands folded on the white linen tablecloth, calm and still. You could have told me in private, he said again, repeating what Grant had earlier. You had time. I nodded. I could have. But then it would have been swept under the rug like everything else. She would have cried. Grant would have called me ungrateful. And you would have defended her. You know it. I know it. He didn't argue. I leaned forward slightly. Every time I stood up for myself, I was told I was being difficult. Every time I asked why I wasn't included or why I was treated like an outsider, someone made a joke or changed the subject. I was always too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. A long silence stretched between us. "I'm not trying to punish you," I added softer now. I spent most of my life wondering what was wrong with me. And the truth is, I was never broken. I was just inconvenient." Steve's eyes glistened. He looked down, fingers tightening around the armrest of his chair. "I remember," he said slowly. "When you were 12, you wanted to go to that writing camp in Vermont. You begged for weeks. I remembered, too. I wrote an essay to get a partial scholarship. Mailed it in myself. Told my parents every day how badly I wanted to go. She said no," Steve continued, voice distant. "Said it was a waste of money. Said we couldn't justify it." I nodded. "Then 2 months later, Grant got that new mountain bike and a GoPro." He exhaled shakily. "I should have seen it. I didn't respond. Some things didn't need agreement." Finally, he looked up. "I don't know what happens now. With your mother, with us." I met his eyes. "I'm not asking for anything to happen. I just wanted the truth out there. Whatever happens next is on you." He nodded slowly, almost like his neck was made of stone. "You're not a regret, Elias." I gave him a faint smile. "I know that now, whether she admits it or not." We sat in silence for a while. The banquet hall was nearly empty now. A few servers were folding up tables, stacking chairs. One of them accidentally knocked over his centerpiece vase, and the crash jolted both of us, but we stayed seated. Eventually, Steve stood up. "You staying in town for a while?" "A few more days." He hesitated. "Would you maybe come by the house sometime?" "Not for her. Just maybe we could talk." I considered it. "Maybe. But I'm not going to pretend everything's fine. I'm not going to sit around and play family like this didn't happen." He nodded, solemn. "I wouldn't ask you to." I stood to, adjusted my coat. "All right, then." He offered his hand. I looked at it for a second, then shook it. It felt strange, formal, awkward, like two businessmen shaking on a deal neither of them understood. But it meant something. Maybe not everything, but something. And then I walked out. The next morning, I woke up in the small guest room at the inn downtown. The sun was spilling in through the half-open curtains, and my phone had more notifications than I cared to read. A few were from people at the party, some saying they had no idea and that they supported me. Others were just vague. "Are you okay?" Texts that I ignored. But one message stood out. It was from Steve, just a simple, "I started packing a few of her things. Don't know what I'll do yet, but I wanted you to know I believe you and I'm sorry it took this long." I didn't reply right away. I just set the phone down, looked out the window, and breathed. For the first time in a long time, I felt still. Not vindicated, not victorious, just still. Later that afternoon, I walked by the old park near our neighborhood, the one where I'd played as a kid, usually alone since Grant didn't want me tagging along with his friends. I sat on the bench near the rusted swing set and just listened. Birds chirping, leaves rustling, kids laughing somewhere in the distance. It felt like closure. Not a clean one, not the kind wrapped in a bow, but real. The truth had been set loose. And whether they liked it or not, no one could pretend anymore. A few days later, I boarded my flight back to Spain. As the plane rose above the clouds, I thought about how strange families were. How blood and last names and childhood photos didn't always mean closeness or love. Sometimes they just meant shared history. And history, when left unchecked, had a way of rotting in the attic like forgotten boxes full of lies. I never heard from my mother again. Not directly. I found out from a cousin months later that she moved in with her sister in Arizona. Told people I am her and twisted the narrative. She kept her pride. She always would. Grant sent one email, short and personal. Something about wishing things had gone differently. I didn't reply, but Steve, he kept in touch. A few emails at first, then a call, then another. We didn't rush into anything. There were no grand reunions or tearful breakthroughs, but every conversation was a step, a choice. And over time, we found something that maybe resembled what we never had before. Not a father-son bond built on obligation or tradition, but something quieter based on honesty, mutual respect, a strange kind of understanding that neither of us had words for. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. And sometimes that's all you need. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My name's Jason. I'm 28 and I've always been the quiet one in the family. The one who didn't ask for much, didn't raise a fuss, didn't make waves. That was the role I was given, and for years I stuck to it. Partly out of habit, partly because I thought if I just kept my head down long enough, they'd finally see me. Really see me. Not as the responsible one or the one who doesn't need anything, but as a son, a brother, a person who mattered just as much as the rest. But that never happened. And this year on my birthday, something inside me finally snapped. It started like every other family gathering. My mom texted me earlier in the week, casually saying we'd do something small on Sunday. She didn't ask what I wanted. No mention of plans. No dinner reservation. No excitement. Just an, oh yeah, we'll do something. I knew better than to expect much, but a part of me still held out hope because 3 weeks earlier, for my younger brother Ryan's 25th, they threw a full-blown bash. They rented a party bus, blasted music all over the neighborhood, and even surprised him with a weekend trip to the mountains. Everyone posted photos on Instagram, tagging him with big, beaming captions like, "Best brother ever," and "Can't imagine life without this guy." I smiled politely in the group shots, kept the camera steady when I was asked to take videos, and didn't say a word when no one thanked me for covering the catering deposit up front. That was always my role, the background guy. So Sunday rolls around. I showed up at the house around noon, wearing jeans and a polo shirt. Nothing flashy, but I'd at least taken the time to shave and bring over some fresh pastries from the bakery near my apartment. My sister Emma opened the door, distracted and on the phone, barely pausing to say hi before walking back inside. The living room was quiet. No balloons, no decorations, not even a happy birthday banner. Just my mom in the kitchen, pulling a single plastic-wrapped cupcake from the fridge and placing it on a paper plate. "There it is," she said with a tired smile, like she was offering me a rare treat. "You still like vanilla, right?" I stared at the cupcake. The frosting was already sliding off the top, and someone had jabbed a crooked candle into it. My dad came in from the garage holding a card, the kind you grab last minute from a drugstore, already signed in different handwriting by everyone, from all of us. No note, no message, just a few names scrawled under a printed joke about aging. I didn't say anything right away. I didn't trust myself to. I just stood there blinking back whatever this tight feeling in my throat was. It wasn't anger exactly. It was worse. It was like I'd spent years trying to be okay with being overlooked, and now I couldn't even fake it anymore. My dad clapped me on the shoulder. "Go ahead, make a wish. And hey, don't expect a parade. You're not a kid anymore." That did it. I looked up at him, then at my mom, who was busy scrolling through her phone like she hadn't even heard him. My brother was nowhere to be seen, probably still recovering from his birthday weekend. Emma had disappeared upstairs. I was alone in the kitchen, staring down at a cupcake no one even bothered to light properly. I blew out the candle without a word, picked up my bag, and walked out the front door. No one stopped me. No one even asked where I was going. I got in my car, drove back to my apartment, and sat in the parking lot for a solid 15 minutes before I could even move. It wasn't just about the cupcake. It wasn't just about this year. It was about every year. Every time I'd covered a bill without complaint, offered to help with moving, babysat nieces and nephews, or driven 2 hours for holidays without asking for anything. Every time I'd made myself smaller, quieter, easier because I thought that's what family needed me to be. Later that night, after I checked into a hotel a few towns over, I finally looked at my phone. One text from Emma. It read, "Mom's crying. Where are you?" I stared at the message for a long time, thumbs hovering over the keyboard, wondering what I was supposed to feel. Guilt? Regret? A sudden urge to rush back and fix things. Instead, I turned off my phone, closed my eyes, and for the first time in a long time, I let the silence settle in without apologizing for it. The next morning, I woke up early. Not because I had to, there were no work calls or family texts blowing up my phone yet, but because my body was still wired from the night before. I'd fallen asleep with that tight feeling still in my chest, the kind that doesn't really go away. It just dulls with time. The hotel room was quiet. Generic beige walls, stiff sheets, the hum of the air conditioner. Sterile, impersonal, but weirdly comforting. No family photos, no passive-aggressive comments floating in from another room. Just silence. I checked my phone. Missed calls from Mom, one from Dad, a few from Emma, nothing from Ryan. Of course, I wasn't surprised. He probably didn't even know or care that I'd left. I didn't answer any of them. Not yet. I needed space. Time to think. For once, I wanted to sit with how I felt without having to explain it to anyone who'd already decided I was too sensitive or overreacting. Around noon, I went down to the hotel cafe, ordered a proper breakfast, eggs, toast, coffee that didn't come from a reheated pot, and brought my laptop with me. I started scrolling through my email and bank accounts. I wasn't just wasting time. I was planning. You see, here's what no one in my family really talked about. I had quietly become the financial backbone of that household. Not because they were destitute, but because they were careless. My parents had made a series of bad investments in their late 50s and were quietly bailed out by me more times than I could count. When Emma went back to school, I helped pay for her tuition shortfall. When Ryan moved out and couldn't make rent, I loaned him a few thousand to get on his feet. My name was on the utilities at my parents' house. I paid for the monthly internet, half the mortgage, though no one mentioned that during family dinners, and most of the maintenance for the family car Dad still drove. I did it because, at the time, it felt like the right thing to do. But what happened the day before made me realize something. They didn't just rely on me. They expected it. They thought of me as reliable, not generous. A wallet, not a person. And worst of all, they didn't respect me enough to even pretend otherwise. After breakfast, I made a list. I pulled up all the accounts where I was listed as the payer, co-owner, or financial backer. Then I started making calls and sending emails. Slowly, methodically, calmly. The car insurance. Canceled. I had a separate policy on my personal vehicle anyway. The house utilities. Disconnected from my account. I scheduled it to end by the end of the billing cycle. No drama, just clean breaks. The bank account I shared with my mom, the one where I'd been depositing a monthly helping hand, closed. I transferred the remaining funds back to my personal savings and sent her a polite email letting her know I was no longer in a position to contribute. The family Netflix, Hulu, and every other subscription that magically charged my card every month without anyone saying thank you. Gone. One click. Log out of all devices. By the time I was done, I felt lighter. Not free yet, but lighter. Like I was finally shifting the weight I'd been carrying alone for years. I stayed at the hotel for 2 more days. In that time, Emma sent 3 more texts. One said, "Seriously, where are you? Mom's freaking out." Another just said, "This is childish." And then finally, "You know you hurt them, right?" That one made me pause. Not because it was true, but because it was exactly the problem. I hurt them. They couldn't even imagine I'd been hurt first. On the 3rd morning, I finally responded. Just one message. "Ask Mom what she did for my birthday." 5 minutes later, Emma replied, "Jason, it's not a competition." I didn't answer. Instead, I drove back to my apartment. I wasn't hiding. I just didn't feel like being the one to show up first. Tail between my legs like I was supposed to apologize for finally drawing a boundary. That weekend, I didn't hear from anyone. But on Monday morning, I got a call from my dad. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short, clipped. "Jason, we need to talk. I think you're taking this too far. Your mother's really upset. We're family. Call me back." Family? That word used to mean something to me. Now, it just sounded like a card they pulled out when things didn't go their way. I didn't call back. Later that afternoon, I got a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I looked through the peephole, I saw Ryan. Backpack slung over one shoulder, looking like he hadn't slept in a day. "Open up, man," he said. "We need to talk." That was the moment things started shifting. Slowly, uneasily, but definitely. I didn't open the door right away. I just stood there staring through the peephole at Ryan like I was looking at a stranger. My little brother. Golden boy, favorite child. The one who got the cheers the weekends away. The surprise parties. The so proud of you speeches I never heard growing up. We were close once, or at least I thought we were until I realized most of our closeness was me helping him, covering for him, picking up the slack so he could keep coasting. He'd never showed up at my door like this before. Uninvited, unannounced, and definitely not when things got uncomfortable at home. "Jason," he said again, softer this time. "Come on." I sighed and opened the door just enough to lean against the frame. "What do you want?" He gave a sheepish half-smile like we were still kids and he'd just broken a window with a baseball. "Look, I didn't know it was like that bad." I raised an eyebrow. Didn't know what was bad? That nobody could bother to plan more than a grocery store cupcake for my birthday? Or that I was paying your rent 3 months ago while everyone else was busy throwing you a party bus bash? He shifted on his feet, trying to play it cool. "Okay, yeah, that was messed up. But like, you didn't say anything." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how predictable it was. "Of course I didn't," I said. "You know why? Because I was raised in that house. Taught that if I wanted attention, I was being dramatic. If I asked for anything, I was being selfish. And if I ever said, 'Hey, I feel left out,' I was told to stop making it about me." He didn't have a comeback. Just looked down at his shoes and scratched the back of his neck. "I mean, yeah, that sounds about right. And you still let it happen," I added. "Every time. You knew. You had to know." He didn't deny it. "I didn't think it mattered to you," he finally said. "You always seemed like you were good. Like you didn't care about that stuff." That hit harder than I expected. I was good at pretending, at swallowing things, at being the one no one had to worry about. But I was tired. So tired of being the solid one so everyone else could afford to fall apart. I opened the door fully and motioned for him to come in. We sat on the couch and I waited. Let the silence hang. I wanted him to feel it, the weight I carried in every one of those silences he'd never noticed before. "So now what?" he finally asked, picking at a loose string on his sleeve. "You cutting everyone off?" I shrugged, not out of spite. "I'm done being used." He gave a bitter laugh. "You think they'll even notice?" "I know they will," I said. "Mom's already crying, remember?" He winced. "She's a mess. Keeps saying she didn't mean for things to be unfair. Funny how she only says that now." Ryan looked up at me then. Really looked. Not like a little brother to an older one, but like a guy who just realized someone he'd taken for granted had lines he didn't know not to cross. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. Like, "I can't fix all of it, but tell me what you need." It was a rare moment of humility from him. I believed it mostly, but I also knew this wasn't just about me. It was about the entire house of cards my parents had built with me as the foundation. And now that I'd started pulling out, it was all starting to shake. "Tell them the truth," I said. "Tell them you saw me walk out because I was tired of being treated like I don't matter. Tell them I won't be helping with money anymore. No more just until the end of the month. No more covering Dad's truck repairs or Mom's prescriptions or Emma's tuition shortfalls." He nodded slowly, the weight of that finally settling in. "And if they ask why," I added, "don't tell them I'm angry. Tell them I'm done." He left without another word, just a quiet nod like he finally got it, or at least was trying to. I didn't expect him to change overnight. I didn't expect any of them to, but I knew deep down something had shifted. Later that night, I got a voicemail from Mom. She didn't yell, didn't guilt-trip me. Her voice was quiet, tired. "Jason, I didn't mean for it to be so uneven. I guess I thought you didn't need the same things. And maybe that was a terrible assumption. I'm sorry. Please come by or call. Just something." I didn't respond. Not yet. Because what came next wasn't an apology. It was denial, guilt, and pressure. And then the real manipulation began. 2 days passed. No more calls, no more texts, just silence. Then, like clockwork, it all came crashing in. It started with a message from Emma. Not a text, but a long, dramatic email. The subject line read, You're tearing this family apart. I didn't even have to open it to know what was inside. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I clicked. The first line, "I don't know what's gotten into you, Jason, but this isn't how families work." She went on to list everything I'd done. Walking out, abandoning mom, making a scene, and withholding support like you're punishing us. She said I was acting like a stranger, that our parents were hurting, and it was my responsibility to help keep the family together. My responsibility. Not Ryan's, not hers, just mine. There was no mention of the cupcake. No mention of the years of lopsided treatment or how I'd subsidized half their lives. Just a guilt-laced plea dressed up as concern. The kicker. She closed with, "If you don't come over this weekend, I don't know if we can ever fix this." I sat there staring at my screen, stunned. Not by the words, but by how unsurprising they were. That weekend came and went. I didn't go. Sunday night, I got a text from Dad. Just 2 words, "Call me." I didn't. So he showed up at my apartment. He knocked twice, then harder. When I didn't answer, I heard his voice through the door, low, firm, but laced with frustration. "Jason, enough of this. Open the door." I didn't move. He knocked again. "I know you're in there." I stayed quiet. Then he said something that made me clench my fists. "You're making your mother sick. You know she's barely eating." Like clockwork. Emotional blackmail. I opened the door slowly and stood there. We stared at each other for a moment. His expression was hard, like he'd rehearsed this confrontation. I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't here to listen. He was here to win. "You done sulking?" he said. That word, sulking, lit something in me. "Is that what you think this is?" I asked quietly. "I think," he said, stepping inside uninvited, "that this little stunt has gone far enough. Your mother's been crying. Emma's furious. And Ryan, well, he's trying. But this is getting out of hand." I stood still, trying to stay calm. "You're talking about a stunt. But not once have you asked why I left." Dad scoffed. "Because we didn't throw a big party? Come on, Jason. You're 28. You don't need balloons and confetti." "No," I said. "I needed to feel like I mattered. I needed someone to show me that I'm not just a bank account and a backup plan. That after all these years, I'm more than just the one who keeps things running while everyone else gets to shine." He rolled his eyes. "You've always been dramatic." That word again, dramatic. I laughed once, bitter and short. "You know what? You can go." "What?" "You heard me," I said. "You came here to convince me I'm the problem. You didn't come to apologize. You didn't come to understand. You came because things are falling apart now that I stopped paying for everything." He narrowed his eyes. "You think this is about money?" "I know it is," I said. "Because the moment the bank shut off, the whole house started shaking." Dad didn't say anything, just stood there fuming. And then, in a tone I hadn't heard since I was a kid, he said, "You think you're better than us now, huh?" I looked him dead in the eye. "No. I just finally think I deserve equal." He left without another word. The next day, the family group chat, which I hadn't left, just muted, lit up. Emma said she was disappointed in how I'd handled things. Mom sent a single message, "I don't know who you've become." And then Ryan dropped. He became the only adult in the room. Took me too long to see it. The chat went silent. The days that followed were quiet. I thought it might finally be over, but that was when the real turning point came. A letter arrived in the mail, certified, from a lawyer. Inside, a notice of intent from my parents to remove me from the future estate plan due to estrangement and recent behavior. I sat at my kitchen table holding the paper, a cold shock running through me. Not because I cared about the inheritance, but because they genuinely thought that was leverage. They didn't know I already knew. I'd seen the estate documents 2 years ago when I helped pay for the lawyer. I was never the main beneficiary. Ryan was. They were just using it now, dangling the illusion of something I'd already been excluded from, like I should be grateful for a future scrap. That was the final straw. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood up, walked to my desk, and pulled out a folder labeled Receipts. Literal and metaphorical. I had every email, every bank transfer, every invoice I'd paid for them over the last 5 years. I didn't gather them for revenge. I gathered them because I'd learned, slowly and painfully, that people will rewrite history if you let them. And now I wasn't letting anyone rewrite mine. I spent that entire night going through the folder. Every transfer, every receipt, every polite little "thanks, Jay" text I'd gotten after covering yet another family bill. I screenshotted bank statements, dug up emailed invoices, and pulled up texts from years ago that said things like, "Hey, can you cover this month? Just until we get things sorted." I built a timeline, organized, thorough, impossible to argue with. Then I wrote a letter, not emotional, not angry, just facts. I included totals. I noted exact dates. I listed the utility accounts still tied to my name, the car insurance payments, the emergency transfers when mom's credit card bounced or dad's truck broke down. I finished it with one sentence. Consider this formal notice that all financial support, direct or indirect, has been permanently discontinued as of this date. Then I attached everything and sent it to each of them, Mom, Dad, Emma, and even Ryan, through individual emails marked with red receipts. I also CC'd the lawyer who sent me the estate letter with a short message. Appreciate the heads up. Please note I was never the intended beneficiary, so no need to threaten me with exclusion. I'm not interested in scraps. I've been the one subsidizing the empire. Less than an hour later, my phone rang. It was Emma. I let it go to voicemail. Then came Mom and Dad. Then a flurry of messages in the family group chat. Most of them some variation of, "This is unnecessary," "You're blowing things out of proportion," and my personal favorite, "This isn't how families solve problems, right?" Because apparently families only solve problems when it doesn't involve confronting their own behavior. Then Ryan texted me privately. I read it all. I didn't know it was that much. I responded simply, "Now you do." He didn't reply, but I noticed he left the group chat later that night. The following weekend, I got a call from my aunt, Mom's sister. I hadn't spoken to her in years, mostly because we only saw each other during holidays and she lived out of state. But she'd seen the ripple effect, heard the family's version of the story, then saw my email, which Mom had forwarded to the extended family with a dramatic caption. "Look what Jason's turned into. I wanted to hear it from you," my aunt said over the phone. So I told her everything, slowly, calmly. I didn't exaggerate, didn't try to spin it. I just laid it out like a story I'd finally decided was worth telling. When I was done, she let out a long breath. "I always wondered why they leaned on you so much," she said. "But I figured it was mutual. I didn't realize they never gave you anything back." That was the first time I heard someone in the family say it. She didn't offer a solution, didn't try to fix it, just validated it. That alone meant more to me than any fake birthday celebration. In the weeks that followed, things changed, but not in the way sitcoms promise. There was no big family reunion, no heartfelt apology in the rain, no group hug in the driveway while dramatic music played. Instead, the silence grew longer, heavier, and somehow more peaceful. Mom tried reaching out a few more times. She even sent a letter in the mail, handwritten, pages long. It rambled, half apology, half guilt trip. She said she never realized how much I did, that she thought I didn't mind, that she wasn't perfect but always had good intentions. And I believed that. I did. But I also believe that good intentions don't excuse years of selective blindness. So I wrote back, "I don't hate you. I'm not trying to hurt anyone, but I won't pretend anymore. I'm not the unbreakable one, and I never should have had to be. I'm okay with space if that's what it takes for people to see me clearly." She didn't respond. I saw Emma once, months later, at a mutual friend's wedding. She walked up stiffly, held a drink like a shield, and said, "You look good." "You too," I replied. We stood in silence for a beat. Then she said, "Ryan's been different, more grounded. I think seeing the numbers finally shook him." I nodded. "I didn't mean for things to get so cold," she added. "I know," I said. "But I think the cold helped me see what was real." She didn't argue, just gave me a sad smile, then drifted back into the crowd. Eventually, Dad reached out again. not to apologize, but to offer a fresh start. He suggested we put the past behind us and come by for Thanksgiving. I declined. I'm building something new, I said. Maybe someday we can meet in the middle, but not yet. Because here's the thing. He wasn't offering reconciliation. He was offering a reset on their terms. The kind where no one talks about what happened and everything goes back to normal. But I didn't want normal. I wanted honest. And I learned that people who aren't willing to talk about the hurt aren't ready to rebuild trust. In time, I filled the space they left behind. I spent more weekends with friends who didn't treat me like a utility. I reconnected with old college buddies. I even joined a hiking group, something I'd never made time for before because I was always too needed. I celebrated my next birthday in a quiet cabin with 3 friends and 0 expectations. No flashy party, no drama. Just a weekend of peace, laughter, and people who showed up because they wanted to, not because I sent reminders. That was the first time I truly felt celebrated. Not for what I could do, not for what I gave, but just for being me. So, no, this story doesn't end with dramatic fireworks or explosive revenge. It ends with a quiet reclamation of time, of space, of worth. I didn't burn bridges. I just stopped repairing ones that only ever led me to places I didn't feel welcome. And I'm not angry anymore. I'm free. And that's worth more than every party bus, every banner, every, from all of us, card I never asked for, but kept pretending was enough. Now I don't settle for crumbs from a table I built. I set my own and only invite people who bring something to it. Now on to the next story. Story 6. On my wedding day, my brother posted a photo. The family on a cruise. Caption, "No drama, just us." That morning, my mom had texted, "Don't take it personally, sweetie." I stayed silent. That night, I cut off access to the emergency fund. 3 weeks later, my sister showed up crying on my lawn. I came outside and told her this. The fact that they didn't come was one of the saddest things I've ever experienced. I gave up waiting by 10 o'clock in the morning. No call, no explanation, nothing but a single text from my mom. That's how I knew they'd made their choice. Not just about the wedding, but about me. Still, the day went on. The part that surprised me the most was how much support came from people I hadn't expected. A few of my cousins from my dad's side, who I hadn't seen in years, actually flew out from Minnesota. They said they didn't agree with what was going on and didn't want me standing up there alone. One of them gave a toast. Another held the camera during the ceremony. My wife's parents went above and beyond, treating me like I'd been part of their family for years. Her mom cried when we said our vows. Her dad stood next to me when I was getting ready and handed me his own cufflinks because he thought they'd look better than mine. I'm Nolan, by the way. I'm from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I grew up in a pretty average neighborhood, nothing fancy, but not the worst either. I'm the youngest of 3. My brother, Tyler, is 5 years older. My sister, Madison, is 3 years older. I was always the quiet one, the awkward one, the one that didn't go out drinking with them or join in their jokes that were usually about someone else in the room. I work in IT and do freelance design on the side. Nothing impressive by family standards. Tyler went into finance. Madison's in pharmaceutical sales. My parents, they ran a legal consultancy firm together. They were successful, cold, and very good at pretending nothing was wrong as long as everything looked perfect from the outside. So no, I wasn't surprised they didn't show up. But I still held out some ridiculous hope. That hope died around 2 p.m. when the music started, and I stood at the altar staring at 3 empty chairs in the front row. The rest of the day, I moved on autopilot, smiled through pictures, and laughed at jokes I didn't hear. My wife noticed, of course, but she didn't ask anything until we got back to the hotel. I told her I didn't want to talk about it. I just wanted to sleep. But before I could, Josh, my best man, came up to me with his phone. He didn't say anything, just handed it to me. It was Tyler's Instagram, a fresh post. They were on a cruise. My parents, my brother, my sister. All in matching navy blue polos, cocktails raised, somewhere sunny with palm trees in the background. The caption said, "The family on a cruise. No drama. Just us." That line stuck in my head like a splinter. No drama. As if I had been the source of all the problems. as if them skipping my wedding without even a proper excuse was a relief for them. I sat with it for a while. Then I pulled out my laptop and logged into the family emergency fund. It was something I started 5 years ago, right after Grandma died. She used to be the one everyone turned to when money got tight, so I figured it was time for someone else to keep that safety net alive. I put in a few hundred each month. No one else did. But that didn't stop them from using it. My mom tapped into it when my dad's truck got totaled. Madison used it last year when her dental surgery went sideways. Even Tyler pulled from it once when he was between jobs. I never said no until that night. I removed their access, changed the passwords, replaced the card, and didn't tell anyone. I just shut it down. And for 3 quiet, peaceful weeks, nothing happened. My wife and I started planning a road trip for our honeymoon. She was excited. I pretended to be. Then one Thursday evening, I was halfway through a movie when I heard the doorbell, followed by someone knocking like they were about to break the door down. I looked out the window. Madison was on the front lawn, pale, crying, and panicking. Her car was parked crooked across the grass. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. She looked at me and said one thing, "I need help." And just like that, the peace was gone. I didn't answer her right away. I just stood there, my arms crossed, trying to keep my thoughts from spinning out. 3 weeks ago, she was sipping cocktails on a cruise, smiling for Instagram with a caption that stabbed me right to the chest. No drama, just us. Now, she was on my lawn, eyes red, hands shaking, asking me to save her. I asked what happened. She said it started as a flutter in her chest, something she'd felt before but never took seriously. It got worse last week. Dizzy spells, shortness of breath. Then she collapsed in a parking lot after a meeting. They rushed her to the ER. She spent 2 nights in the hospital. They ran tests. Turns out it's not something that'll go away on its own. She needs a cardiac ablation soon. It's not optional anymore. Without it, there's a real risk it could escalate, stroke or worse. Her voice cracked when she said that part. I asked what the insurance covered. She said it barely touched the cost. The hospital wanted a $7,000 down payment to even schedule it. She tried applying for payment plans. Denied. Tried contacting Tyler. Nothing. Parents were still on the cruise somewhere off the coast of South America with no cell service. Then she said she tried the emergency fund. I told her it was gone. She blinked, confused, and asked what I meant. I didn't give her a speech. I just told her I'd shut it down the night of the wedding. She stared at me for a few seconds like she was trying to decide whether to scream or fall apart. She fell apart. She said I was her last hope. She didn't know what else to do. She looked desperate. I'd never seen her that way before. For a second, I didn't see Madison, the high-powered sales rep with perfect nails and smug little comments. I saw a terrified person who didn't think she'd make it. After she left, I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at the floor. When my wife came in, I told her everything. She asked if I was thinking about helping. I said yes. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. We had just finished paying off the venue. We were finally looking at honeymoon options, Oregon, maybe a few stops up the coast. Nothing extravagant, but something we'd been saving for. Something we both needed after the emotional mess the wedding had turned into. I told her I wouldn't touch our joint account. I'd use the freelance money I'd stashed away, my side gigs. She said it didn't matter where the money came from. It was the principle that Madison ignored me on the biggest day of my life and now had the audacity to show up asking for help like nothing happened. She wasn't wrong, but I couldn't stop thinking about how scared she looked. The next morning, I wired Madison the $7,000. No message, no calls. I didn't even tell her it was coming. She didn't respond for 2 days. Then she sent me a single text. I got it. Thank you. I'll pay you back. I didn't believe her. That same night, my phone rang. It was a voicemail from my mom. She must have gotten word somehow. She said she was proud of me for stepping up, that family takes care of each other, and that she always knew I had a good heart. I stared at the screen and thought about how none of them were there when I said, I do. Not even a call. But now, when it was convenient, they remembered who I was. I deleted the message without listening to the rest. 2 days later, Madison had the procedure. She called afterward. She sounded groggy but thankful. She said everything went fine. I told her I was glad she was okay. That week I heard from Tyler, too. A text. Heard you helped Mads. Good move, bro. Suddenly, I was getting little messages here and there. A few photos from the cruise. A comment from my dad on one of my Facebook posts. It was like they were trying to warm up to me again. But I knew what this was. It wasn't love. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a turning point. It was gratitude, temporary and shallow. And I knew deep down it wouldn't last. The first time I visited Madison in the hospital, she was sitting up, flipping through a magazine like it was just another lazy Sunday. She smiled when she saw me. Not a fake one either. It was soft, tired, real. She said, "Thanks again." I just nodded. I wasn't there to rehash it. The truth was I didn't go for her. I went to see if I'd regret it. The hospital room was small and quiet. A bag of saline dripping slowly next to her bed. She looked pale, not like herself. No makeup, hair tied up messily. She talked about how scared she'd been, how weird it felt to go from boardrooms and business calls to heart monitors and nurses asking if she needed help sitting up. She said it made her think about priorities, about people, about me. I didn't say anything. I let her talk. For the next few days, it felt like maybe, just maybe, something had shifted. Tyler texted a few times. Mom emailed me a photo from the cruise and said she wished things had been different. My dad even sent a proud of you, son message that felt ripped from a Hallmark card. But still, it was something. They started calling me. Not constantly, but more than I'd heard from them in years. Mom said Madison told them everything, that if I hadn't stepped in, things could have gone south really fast. Suddenly, I was part of the family again, at least in theory. My wife stayed quiet about all of it. She didn't say, "I told you so," but she also didn't ask how Madison was doing. She was polite when she overheard me talking to my mom, but her eyes said it all. She was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Started slowly. First, it was Madison texting less, not answering my messages until a day or two later. Then Tyler sent a group photo from a family dinner, everyone at some steakhouse downtown. I hadn't been invited. Mom sent a message that said, "Oh, that was last minute. You wouldn't have been able to make it anyway." Which was funny because I live 15 minutes away. Then came the kicker. 2 weeks after Madison got out of the hospital, she posted a photo with the caption, "Some people show up when it matters most. Others, well, they never really do." I stared at it for a long time. I thought maybe she meant someone else, but then I read the comments. One of her friends said, "Glad your real family was there for you." She replied with a heart emoji and a tag to Tyler. I didn't say anything. Not to her, not to my mom, not even to my wife. I just sat there on the couch feeling like an idiot. It hit me then as clearly as anything ever had. Helping them hadn't changed anything. I was still Nolan, the one they left behind, the one they conveniently remembered when they needed something. And once that something was taken care of, they went back to pretending I didn't exist. My wife came into the room a little while later, saw the look on my face and said quietly, "You see it now, don't you?" I nodded. She said, "You can't save people who don't think you're worth remembering." That night, I sat in front of my computer and opened up the same spreadsheet where I used to track the emergency fund contributions. I scrolled past every withdrawal with my name next to it, every transfer, every dollar that kept that account alive while they lived like I was invisible. And for the first time, I seriously considered asking for it back. The next day, I opened my email to find a new message from Madison. The subject line was just one word, "Grateful." Inside, she thanked me again, said she was reflecting a lot lately, that she owed me more than money, and that she was planning to come over next week to talk. I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure what to say. By that point, I'd already made up my mind not to expect anything from her, emotionally or financially. But there was still that small, pathetic part of me that wanted her to mean it, that wanted somebody in my family to look me in the eye and say they had been wrong. A few days later, she showed up. No warning. I had the garage open because I'd been working on a shelving unit for the guest room. She walked in with a box of pastries and a paper folder. We sat at the kitchen table. She said she wanted to go over how she planned to pay me back. She opened the folder and started going through the numbers. It was neat, organized, serious. She offered $200 a month starting next paycheck. She said she'd cut back on travel and cancel her gym membership. For a second, it looked like she really meant to do it. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down and smiled. A second later, she said almost casually, "So, I might be going to Napa next month. It's a work thing, but kind of optional. Still figuring it out." I didn't say anything, just looked at her. She noticed, backtracked, said she might cancel, said she wasn't sure. The pastries sat untouched. After she left, my wife came in and asked if that was Madison's car out front. I nodded. She just shook her head and said, "Well, I hope she enjoyed her pastries." 2 days later, something unexpected happened. I got a call from my cousin Jordan, one of the few from my side who actually came to the wedding. He asked if I had a few minutes. He sounded serious. He told me he just talked to my mom. Apparently, she had been telling people that I only gave Madison the money because I was trying to look like a good guy in front of my wife's family, that I used it to buy forgiveness after the wedding drama. She said it wasn't about generosity. It was about guilt. Jordan was pissed. He thought I should know. I thanked him, hung up, and didn't say anything to my wife. Didn't even tell Madison. Instead, I logged into my bank app, opened the transfer record, and screenshotted it. Then I texted Madison. I said, "You don't owe me anything. Consider the debt canceled." She replied 10 minutes later, "Are you serious?" I wrote, "Dead serious. Let's call it even." She sent another message right after that. "I don't understand. I want to pay you back." But the truth was she didn't. She wanted the appearance of paying me back. She wanted to clear her conscience without the weight of actually carrying me in it, just like the rest of them. That was the night I decided I'd never open that emergency fund again. Not for them. Not for anyone with the last name Langley. My wife didn't say, "I told you so." She just hugged me. A long one. The kind that says, "You finally see it now." And I did. But I also knew this wasn't the end, because people like that, they always find their way back when the next storm hits. And the worst part, they make you feel like it's your umbrella they deserve to stand under. Madison had the surgery. It went smoothly. At least that's what I gathered from her Instagram stories. She didn't call, didn't text, just posted photos like it was a vacation. Smiling in the hospital bed, peace signs, heart emojis, and grateful for modern medicine captions. One post showed her holding a card that said, "Fighter," surrounded by flowers. Another was a boomerang of her holding up a spoonful of pudding with the words "Hospital food hits different" in bold white letters. I watched all of it in silence. There was no mention of me. No thank you to the person who made this possible. No nod to the fact that someone else had made sure she didn't go into debt for this procedure. Just comments from her friends calling her a warrior. My mom commented, "You're the strongest woman I know." Tyler wrote, "Proud to be your big brother." Nothing from Madison. Nothing to me. The only acknowledgement I got came through a third party. Jordan texted me again, asking if I'd seen the celebration. I hadn't. He sent me the photo. It was a party at our uncle's lake house. White lights strung around the deck. Wine glasses clinking in the background. Madison smiling in a floral dress. Tyler with his arm around her. My parents on either side. There was a cake on the table. "Welcome back, Maddie." I wasn't invited. No one told me it was happening. I stared at the photo for a long time, trying to feel something other than what I felt. It wasn't anger, not really. It was more like this dull, steady confirmation that I wasn't just forgotten. I was excluded. My wife saw the picture over my shoulder. She didn't say anything at first. Then she just muttered, "You paid for that cake." She was right. I had. The next morning, Madison texted me. Just one sentence. "Dinner last night was great. Wish you'd been there." I didn't respond. 3 days later, another message. "Let's catch up soon. Things are finally settling down." I left it unread. Then came the voicemail from my dad. His tone was warm. Too warm, like we were old friends. He said he was glad everything worked out, that the family really pulled together during a difficult time, and that Madison was lucky to have such a strong unit around her. Then came the part I'll never forget. "You played your part, son. We're all proud of that." Played my part. Like this had been a performance. Like my $7,000 contribution was just a prop in their little production of Perfect Family Sticks Together. I didn't call back. I didn't answer any of the follow-ups. Instead, I did something else. I went into the spare room, what was supposed to be my home office, and pulled out the old binder where I used to keep all my family finance records. The emergency fund, the contributions, the IOUs, every dollar that had passed from me to them. I stared at it for hours. Then I started printing. I printed every transaction from the past 5 years. I highlighted names, timestamps, and totals. Over $19,000 across 6 years. Not including gifts, not including unpaid loans, just raw help. I put it all in an envelope and sealed it. Not because I planned to send it, but because I wanted to remember. I needed a physical reminder of what they took and how little they gave in return. That night, while we were brushing our teeth, my wife looked at me and asked, "Do you still think it was the right thing to help her?" I spat out my toothpaste and said it was the right thing, just not for the right people. She didn't say anything, just nodded. Then she asked something else, quieter this time. "If she hadn't made it, do you think they would have even told you in time to make the funeral?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and the silence between us said everything we both already knew. Another month passed. Nothing. Not a single call, not even a lazy text. Madison never followed up about catching up. Never mentioned the money again. There were no random check-ins, no "how's married life?" messages. Nothing from Tyler, and nothing from my parents either. I think I was hoping, stupidly, that maybe someone would eventually say it. Just one person, one real, honest sentence. We were wrong. But instead, I found out my mom was hosting a birthday dinner for Madison at a nice place downtown. I found out the same way I'd learned about the lake house dinner. Facebook. Same setup. Smiling faces, wine glasses, candles, carefully posed group photo. Madison had her arm around Tyler. My dad had his hand on her shoulder. My mom captioned it, "Happy birthday to our miracle girl." When family sticks together, anything is possible. They stuck together, all right. They just made sure I wasn't part of the glue. That night, I didn't say anything to my wife. I didn't need to. She saw it too. She just came and sat next to me, scrolling through her own phone, and after a while said, "You've got to stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage." She was right. She had been right the whole time. So, I did something I hadn't let myself do until then. I went back through every single transaction connected to the emergency fund. Every time I transferred money, every time someone else withdrew from it, I printed all of it. Not just Madison's $7,000, but the full total, $19,482.13 over the years. I sat at my desk and looked at the number like it was a verdict. Then I wrote a letter, not to send, just to say the words I'd never be able to say out loud without being called dramatic or selfish or bitter. In it, I told them exactly how it felt to be left out of my own wedding by the people who were supposed to raise me. I reminded them how they drank cocktails on a cruise, while I read a text that said, "Don't take it personally, sweetie." I told them how I stood at the altar alone, how strangers and cousins had to fill their seats, and how, even after all that, I still helped when it mattered. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because I believed, like an idiot, that maybe it would finally change something. But it didn't. All it did was prove that they only see me when I'm useful. And once the crisis passes, I disappear again. I folded the letter and slipped it into the envelope with the transaction printouts. I labeled it in case I ever forget. It went into the back of my filing cabinet behind my tax returns. A few days later, my wife and I were having dinner, just leftovers and wine. And out of nowhere, she asked me something. "Would you take it back if she offered?" I didn't even have to think. I said no, because now I understood it was never about the money. It was about respect. And the truth is, you can't collect respect from people who don't think you deserve to sit at the same table. And maybe that was always the story of me and my family. I gave more than I should have, hoping it would finally make me enough. Didn't. I was never the son they bragged about, never the brother they invited just to invite. I was the fallback, the fund, the fixer. And when I stopped playing that role, I stopped being anything to them at all. So now I don't play it anymore. No more favors. No more helping. No more bending until I snap. I'm Nolan. I live in Cedar Rapids. I married a woman who sees me. I've got a career that doesn't impress anyone but pays the bills just fine. I know how to build things with my hands. I know how to love deeply. I know how to show up when it matters. And I know now more than ever that none of that means I owe anyone anything just because we share a last name. Sometimes the only real healing comes from walking away and not looking back. Now on to the next story. Story 7. I paid rent for my sister and her fiancé, but on Dad's birthday, I found out that they were laughing at me behind my back. So I was cultured and stopped paying a month later. I was paying rent to my sister and her fiancé. Yes, you heard that right, rent. It's not like they gave me a place to live. It was the other way around. I was sending them $800 a month to help with their mortgage and bills. It all started about 3 years ago. At the time, Emma and Jared, her fiancé, were having a hard time financially. They were drowning in debt, and I could tell they were too proud to ask for help. At the time, I had just gotten a job teaching high school. The pay wasn't great, but I wasn't married, I didn't have any kids, and I figured I could afford it. I mean, what are siblings for, right? I told them I'd help them out for a while until they got back on their feet. They were grateful, or so I thought. But the temporary arrangement dragged on and on. 1 month turned into 6, 6 turned into a year, and suddenly it was 3 years of sending money every month without fail. I adjusted my entire lifestyle around it. No big purchases, no vacations, just living frugally to keep them afloat. Still, I didn't complain. I knew I was doing the right thing. Family first, always. Then the wedding announcement came. They were finally getting married after all these years. And I thought, okay, this is a turning point. I secretly hoped they'd tell me they didn't need my help anymore. But instead, Emma called me one day and asked if I could help with her wedding expenses. I'll never forget that call. I paused for a long time before telling her, "No, Emma, I already send you $800 a month. I can't do more than that." She became silent. I don't know what she expected me to say, but I had to draw the line somewhere. Fast forward 2 months to my father's birthday. We had a big family reunion at Grandma's house. It was the usual mess. Tons of food, kids running around, people arguing about whose barbecue sauce was better. Emma and Jared showed up looking like they didn't have a care in the world. We were all in good spirits, sharing drinks and talking about old family stories. Everything seemed normal. Toward the end of the evening, my grandmother came over and touched my arm. "Brian, can we talk outside for a minute?" she asked quietly. I didn't think much of it. Grandma is known for having little heart-to-hearts. Sometimes it's life advice, sometimes just an encouraging word. I figured maybe she was trying to nudge me about settling down. She always asked when I was going to meet a nice girl and start a family. We stepped out onto the porch where it was quieter. She looked around to make sure no one was within earshot. Then she said something that hit me like a punch in the gut. "They made fun of you," she said in a low voice. "Who?" I asked, frowning. "Emma and Jared. They laughed behind your back," she said. "They think you're stuck in life, that you'll never have a family of your own, that you're wasting your time trying to help them. They joke about how much you sacrifice while you live alone and struggle to be a teacher." I felt a knot in my chest. Couldn't believe it. I had sacrificed so much for them, and this was how they saw me. Some kind of loser to be pitied and laughed at. I stood there in silence, absorbing her words. Grandma looked at me with sad, knowing eyes. "Brian, you're a good man," she said softly. "But you don't have to let them treat you like this. They're taking advantage of your goodness." I nodded, still stunned. What was I supposed to do with this information? Confront them in front of everyone? Ruin the evening? No, I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me rattled. Instead, I went back inside, put on a smile, and acted as if nothing was wrong. I even clinked glasses with Jared as we toasted Dad's birthday. But inside, everything had changed. I knew I couldn't live like this anymore. They thought I was a joke? Fine. Let's see how funny things get when the money stops coming in. I wasn't going to lose my cool. I play it smart, keep things classy. But they were about to learn that I wasn't a pushover. The morning after Dad's birthday party, I woke up early, still thinking about what Grandma had said. Part of me wanted to call Emma right away and confront her, but I decided against it. I needed time to think. Instead, I went through my usual routine: coffee, lesson plans, grading papers, business as usual. About a week later, I got a call from Emma. "Hey Brian, just checking in," she said, all cheerful, like nothing was wrong. "Hey," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. She started rambling on about wedding plans, flowers, guest lists, and some problem with the caterer. I let her talk for a while. Then she casually brought up money. "Oh, and Jared was wondering if you could send this month's rent a little early. We have a few things coming up." I had to force myself not to laugh. "Yeah, about that. I'm actually going through some financial stuff myself," I said. "I won't be able to send the money this month." There was a pause. "Wait, you mean just this month, right? You'll still help us after that?" "I don't know, Emma. I've been helping for 3 years. I might need to focus on my own situation for a while." She was silent for a moment, and then I heard her voice tighten. "Brian, are you serious? We're counting on this money." "Yeah. Well, I was counting on my family not laughing behind my back." There was another long silence. I didn't elaborate, and she didn't ask what I meant. Instead, she gave a stiff "okay" and quickly ended the call. That was the beginning of the fallout. 2 weeks passed. I didn't hear from Emma again, but I knew something was brewing. Then one night, my mom called me out of the blue. "Brian, I just talked to Emma," she began, and I could tell she wasn't happy. "She says you stopped helping her with her bills. What's going on?" I sighed. "Mom, I've been sending them $800 a month for 3 years. It's not like I owe them anything. I have my own life to deal with." "Well, yeah, but they're family. And Emma said you've been acting distant. Did she also mention that they've been making fun of me behind my back?" I shot back. That shut her up for a second. "What are you talking about?" I told her what Grandma had said. For a moment, there was nothing but stunned silence on the other end. Finally, she spoke again, her voice softer. "Brian, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. You've done more for them than anyone could have expected. When they treat you like this, I understand why you're upset." It was a relief to hear her say that, but I knew things were about to get ugly. Sure enough, a few days later, Jared called me out of the blue. "Hey Brian," he said, his tone forced and polite. "Emma's really upset. I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding." "Is that right?" I said, keeping my cool. "Yeah, man. I don't know where you're getting these ideas, but we've never said anything bad about you. You've been great to us." "Oh, so Grandma just made that up?" I asked bluntly. Jared stammered for a second. "Look, if she said something, it was probably twisted. You know how old people can exaggerate." I didn't buy it for a second. "You know what, Jared? Let's not pretend. I'm done with the money. You guys are on your own. I hope the wedding goes well." I hung up before he could argue. But the real kicker came a few days later when I got a call from Grandma herself. "Brian, honey, can you come over? I have something to show you," she said. Curious, I went over to her house. She led me into her study and handed me an old family photo album. "I was going through some things and found these," she said with a small smile. I flipped through the pages and stopped at a series of old photos of me, Emma, and Jared as kids. But then my eyes caught something unexpected. A letter tucked between the pages. It was dated over 20 years ago, before I was even born. "Grandma, what is this?" I asked, pulling it out. "Read it," she said softly. The letter was from my late grandfather, and it mentioned a secret trust fund he'd set up for his grandchildren to be divided equally. It said, "Unless one is found to be abusing the family bond." "Emma and Jared don't know about this," Grandma said quietly. "But I think you should." I sat back, stunned. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about setting boundaries. And maybe, just maybe, karma was about to catch up with them. After Grandma showed me the letter, I had a lot to think about. There was a trust fund that my late grandfather had set up for all of us, but she didn't go into detail about how much money was in it. She made it clear that no one else in the family knew. Not Emma, not Jared, not even my parents. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked her. Grandma gave me a knowing look. "Because I want you to understand something. You're not the failure they make you out to be. You've worked hard, sacrificed for others, and shown more integrity than most people ever would. This fund, it was meant to reward people like you." I nodded slowly, taking in her words. I didn't want to rush into anything with this new information, but it felt good to know that I had some hidden leverage. Over the next week, the drama escalated. I began to hear through the family grapevine that Emma and Jared were panicking. I guess cutting off their monthly allowance had hit them harder than I thought. Jared's hours at work had been cut, and Emma was having trouble paying some of the wedding vendors. I thought they'd get by, but instead, they started trying to guilt other family members into giving them money. It backfired spectacularly. My mom mentioned to one of her sisters that I'd been supporting Emma and Jared financially for years. Word spread quickly, and soon everyone in the family knew. My Aunt Laura, who doesn't hold back, apparently tore into Emma at a family gathering I wasn't even at. "You let Brian pay your bills for 3 years and now you're playing the victim? Are you serious?" she reportedly yelled. Emma called me afterwards, furious. "What the hell, Brian? Did you tell everyone about the money?" "No," I said calmly. "I only told Mom. You brought this on yourself. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that is?" she hissed. "Emma, I think you have bigger problems than embarrassment," I said. "Maybe take a look in the mirror and ask yourself why you thought it was okay to treat me like a joke." She didn't have an answer. I thought that would be the end of it, but Jared decided to escalate things. He must have been desperate because he actually showed up unannounced at my school one afternoon. He waited for me in the parking lot. "Brian, we need to talk," he said, trying to sound calm but clearly seething underneath. "About what?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Look, man, Emma's been crying nonstop. People are turning against us. We just want to make things right," he said. "Oh, you want to make things right now? After 3 years of taking my money and laughing behind my back?" I shook my head. "No thanks, Jared. I'm done being your safety net." His face flushed. "You act like we wanted to hurt you. It wasn't like that." "Then how was it, Jared?" I interrupted. "Explain to me how mocking someone who helped you isn't meant to hurt them." He didn't have a good answer. Instead, he mumbled something about how it was all a misunderstanding and stormed off. Later that night, I got a call from my father. He rarely gets involved in drama, so I knew this was serious. "Brian," he said, "I had a long talk with Emma and Jared. They're struggling right now, but they regret the way they treated you." "That's nice," I said flatly, "but I'm not interested in fixing things right now. They need to work out their own problems." Dad sighed. "Look, I'm not saying you're wrong. You've been more than generous. But maybe it's time to sit down and have a real talk with them. Clear the air." I thought for a moment. "I'll think about it," I finally said. But deep down, I wasn't in a forgiving mood. They had used me for years. They'd have to prove they deserved a second chance, and I wasn't going to make it easy for them. About a week after my dad's call, I got an invitation, handwritten, which was weird. It was from Emma. She wanted me to meet her and Jared at a coffee shop near their house for what she called a family meeting. I debated whether to go, but curiosity got the better of me. I figured I'd hear them out, even though I wasn't expecting much. The cafe was almost empty when I arrived. Emma and Jared were already there, looking a little too rehearsed. Emma had that fake smile plastered on her face, and Jared was fidgeting with his phone. "Hey, thanks for coming," Emma said as I sat down. "Sure. What's this about?" I asked, keeping it short. Emma took a deep breath. "Look, we just want to apologize. We shouldn't have talked about you like that. It was wrong, and we're really sorry." Jared nodded and chimed in. "We were stressed out and made some bad jokes. We didn't mean any of it seriously." I sat back and studied them. It all felt too smooth, too scripted. "Okay," I said. "But let me ask you something. If Grandma hadn't told me, would you have ever apologized?" They froze for a second. Emma looked at Jared, who quickly spoke up. Of course we would have. Eventually. I chuckled. Right? Sure. They shifted uncomfortably, and that's when Emma dropped the real reason for the meeting. Brian, we need a favor, she said carefully. There it was. I almost laughed out loud. Let me guess. You need money? Not exactly, Emma said hesitantly. We need you to co-sign a loan for us. I stared at her as if she'd grown a second head. Are you serious? We've hit a rough patch, Jared jumped in. We just need some help refinancing the house. If you co-sign, we'll get a better rate and we can do the rest. You wouldn't have to pay anything. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You've got to be kidding me, I said. You think I'm going to put my name on a loan for you after everything that's happened? Are you even listening to yourselves right now? Emma's face flushed. We're not trying to take advantage of you. We're trying to make things right. I shook my head in disbelief. You don't fix things by asking for more handouts. You fix things by taking responsibility for your own lives. Jared slammed his hand down on the table. You're being unreasonable, Brian. We're family. I laughed bitterly. Exactly. And family doesn't treat each other like dirt. You're on your own. I got up, threw a few dollars on the table for my coffee, and walked out without another word. A few days later, the unexpected bombshell dropped. Grandma called me, sounding shaken. Brian, you need to come over right away. It's important, she said. When I arrived at her house, she handed me an envelope with my name on it. Inside was a letter from the bank about the trust fund. Apparently, Emma and Jared had somehow gotten wind of it and were trying to claim a larger share, arguing that I had withheld family assets. They went to a lawyer, Grandma said, her voice quivering with anger. They say you hid the trust fund from them, even though you didn't know about it until recently. I was stunned. You've got to be kidding me. They're desperate, Brian. They're grasping at straws, she said. But this is low even for them. Then it hit me. They weren't just struggling. They were sinking. And now they were willing to throw me under the bus to save themselves. I'm not going to let them get away with this, I said firmly. They've crossed the line. Grandma smiled a little sadly. Good. It's about time someone taught them a lesson. I wasn't done being blindsided, though. The next morning, I got a call from a lawyer representing Emma and Jared. I braced myself for a nasty fight, but the lawyer sounded surprisingly apologetic. Mr. Daniels, he said, I wanted to let you know that my clients have decided to withdraw their lawsuit. They'd like to settle the matter privately. Withdraw their claim? Why? There was an awkward pause. Let's just say some new information has come to light regarding their financial situation. I think they realized they were in no position to pursue it legally. I couldn't help but wonder what had happened. Later that day, I heard from Aunt Laura. Apparently, Jared had been fired from his job after someone anonymously reported that he'd been embezzling small amounts of company money. To make matters worse, the bank had rejected their loan application outright, citing credit concerns. Karma had hit them hard, and I hadn't even lifted a finger. A few days after the fiasco with the trust claim, I was still processing everything when Emma texted me. We need to talk, please. I ignored her. The next day, without warning, she showed up at my apartment. She was pacing outside my building when I got home from work. I sighed but got out of the car. What do you want, Emma? I asked, already exhausted. She looked exasperated. Brian, I didn't know Jared was going to take it this far with the lawyer. I swear I didn't want it to happen. He panicked. Panicked? You were both perfectly fine trying to screw me over with that trust fund, I said. She looked down at her feet and didn't deny it. I'm sorry, okay? We've just been under so much pressure. The wedding costs, the house. Everything is falling apart. You know whose fault that is, right? I shot back. Maybe you wouldn't be in this situation if you hadn't relied on me for so many years. She winced but then surprisingly said, You're right, but I don't have anyone else to turn to. I stared at her in disbelief. You don't get it, do you? I'm done. I gave you years of my life, thousands of dollars, and all you did was laugh behind my back. Now you come here and expect me to save you again. Brian, you're my brother. she said quietly. We're supposed to look out for each other. Yeah? Where was that support when you and Jared made fun of me? When you tried to steal from me? She didn't have an answer. I shook my head. Emma, I'm done. This is the last conversation we're going to have about money or trust funds or anything else. I don't want anything more to do with you and Jared. Her eyes widened. You can't just cut me off like that. We're family. Watch me. With that, I walked in, leaving her standing there. It hurt more than I wanted to admit, but enough was enough. The next day, Grandma called me. She'd heard everything. In our family, nothing stays a secret for long. Brian, I want you to know something, she said. I've decided I'm not going to talk to Emma or Jared anymore. At least not for a long time. I was surprised. Grandma, you don't have to do that for me. I do, she said firmly. You've been nothing but good to them, and they tried to betray you. If they don't respect you, they don't respect me. They crossed the line, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Hearing that from her meant more to me than I could put into words. A few weeks later, I got another surprise. I ran into Aunt Laura at the grocery store, and she pulled me aside. Hey, I heard about everything that happened. I just wanted to tell you that I am proud of you, she said. Proud of me? I asked, confused. Yeah, you finally stood up for yourself. Emma always had a way of manipulating people, but you didn't let her walk all over you. I shrugged. It wasn't easy, but I couldn't live like that anymore. Well, you did the right thing. And by the way, you might want to check in with Grandma. She's making some changes to the trust fund. That caught my attention. Changes? Laura grinned. Let's just say Emma and Jared might not be included in the future plans. Sure enough, when I visited Grandma a few days later, she confirmed it. I talked to the lawyer, she said. I've decided that if Emma and Jared can't show responsibility and respect, they won't get their share of the trust. I'm giving them a chance to change, but if they don't, the trust will be divided between you and your cousins instead. I was speechless for a moment. You don't have to do that, Grandma. I don't want any of the money. I know, she said, smiling. That's why you deserve it. After that, I cut off all contact with Emma and Jared. No texts, no calls. I blocked their numbers and stopped dealing with any family drama. Slowly, things started to feel easier. I didn't realize how much of a burden I was carrying until it was finally gone. The real kicker? I heard through the grapevine that Jared had moved out of the house after losing his job. Their relationship was on the rocks, and Emma had to move back in with her mom. I wasn't happy about it, but I couldn't deny the irony. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My stepmother made my life a living hell. When she asked for my kidney to save her life, I had the last word. I asked her, is this the stepmother who cheated on my dad? And then, I always thought my family was pretty solid growing up. Sure, my parents fought like anyone else, but I never thought my dad would cheat. He was the family man type, or so I thought. Then Emma came into our lives, and everything went downhill. It started when I was 17. My parents seemed happy, or at least content. My mom, Lisa, was strong-willed, warm, and the kind of person to whom everyone naturally gravitated. My dad, Alan, was quieter but dependable. This dynamic worked until it didn't. One day, I came home from school early because of a canceled class. I remember hearing quiet voices coming from the kitchen. My dad was there, and so was Emma. She was a younger woman who worked in my dad's office, someone he'd mentioned in passing before, but the way they talked wasn't normal. The way she laughed at something he said, leaning just a little too close, told me more than I wanted to know. I didn't confront him right away. I wasn't even sure what I had seen, but I guess I didn't have to. A month later, my mother found out about the affair. I don't know how she found out, but when she did, she didn't stick around to play games. She packed her bags, took my sister Stacy, who was only 13 at the time, and left. I could have gone with her, but I didn't. Not because I didn't love my mom, but because I thought my dad didn't know I'd figured out what he was doing. I thought if I stayed, I could somehow keep him grounded. But the reality was, I just didn't want to leave the house I grew up in. That's when Emma moved in. My dad wasted no time getting engaged to her. And before I could even wrap my head around how fast it happened, She was living with us. And let me tell you, she was everything you'd want in a horrible stepmother. Emma was arrogant, selfish, and a total narcissist. She acted like marrying my dad made her the queen of the house. She'd make snide comments about how I should respect her as a parent because she was now my father's wife. I was 19, an adult, and she was barely in her early 30s. The idea of taking orders from her was ridiculous. I tried to ignore her as much as I could, but Emma had a way of getting under my skin. She was constantly criticizing me, complaining about how messy I wasn't, and telling me I needed to grow up while she mooched off my dad's paycheck. The worst part was the way she treated my dad. He adored her for some reason I'll never understand, but she treated him like dirt. She'd berate him for the smallest things and belittle him in front of me. She even joked once that he was like her child and that it was her job to keep him in line. The man who raised me, who I'd always respected, just sat there and took it. It was unbearable, but I stuck around hoping things would get better. Spoiler, they didn't. One night, after another one of her snide remarks, I complained to my dad. I told him I was tired of the way Emma was treating me, and to my surprise, he actually took my side. He told Emma to back off and stop acting like she was my mother. They fought that night, loudly, and I stayed in my room feeling guilty for causing it, but also relieved that someone was finally calling her out. Things didn't get better, though. Emma doubled down and made my life miserable in every way she could think of. She'd accidentally throw away my stuff, tell lies about me to my dad, and find ways to get under my skin. I hated being in that house, but I had nowhere else to go. Then, about 2 years later, Emma's health began to fail. She'd been diabetic for years, but it was getting worse. At first, I admit I didn't care. It's hard to feel sorry for someone who has spent so much time making you miserable. But when she was diagnosed with diabetic nephropathy, things started to get serious. Her condition worsened over the months, and finally, the doctors told her that her best chance was a kidney transplant. That's when my dad and Emma came to me with a request I never saw coming. That's when it all began. The first time my dad mentioned it, I thought he was joking. We were sitting in the living room, me scrolling through my phone, him looking uncharacteristically nervous. He began clearing his throat. I wanted to talk to you about something serious. I looked up and braced myself. Whenever he started with that tone, it was never good news. What is it? It's about Emma. I rolled my eyes. Of course, it was about Emma. It was always about Emma. What is it now? She needs a kidney. I paused, not sure if I'd heard him right. A kidney? Like a transplant? Yeah. He hesitated, avoiding eye contact. The doctors say hers is failing, and it's getting worse. They've tried treatments, but nothing's working. She needs a donor. I stared at him, waiting for him to get to the point. Okay. And, well, they tested me. I'm not a match. None of your family is either. I let that sink in for a second. So, what does that have to do with me? He finally looked at me. We were hoping you'd get tested just to see if you're a match. You're young, healthy. There's a chance. I laughed, more in disbelief than anything else. You want me to give her a kidney? She's your stepmother, he said, as if that explained everything. She's not my stepmother. She's the woman who made my life a living hell for 2 years. Now you want me to give her a kidney? She's my wife, he shot back, his voice firm. I love her, and I can't lose her. I wanted to yell at him, tell him how ridiculous this was, but instead, I just sat there, stunned. She's been through a lot, he added, as if that would sway me. She's sick and she's scared. We're all scared. Just think about it. That's all I'm asking. I didn't say anything. Couldn't. I got up and walked to my room, slamming the door behind me. A week later, I found myself in the hospital being poked and prodded by a team of doctors. I wasn't doing it for Emma. I was just trying to prove I wasn't a match so they'd leave me alone. But of course, life has a twisted sense of humor. You are a perfect match, the doctor told me. Your health is excellent and your tissue compatibility is ideal. If you're willing, you'd make an excellent donor. I sat there in shock. Perfect match? How was that even possible? When I got home, my father and Emma were waiting for me in the living room. She looked frail, thinner than usual, and her usually smug expression had been replaced by something softer, almost desperate. "Well?" my dad asked. I sighed. "I'm a match." Emma's eyes lit up, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "That's great news," she said, her voice trembling. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "Wait," I interrupted. "I didn't say I'd do it." Their expressions changed instantly. My dad looked confused, and Emma's jaw dropped. "What do you mean? You won't do it?" my dad asked. "I mean exactly what I said. I'm not giving her my kidney." "Why not?" Emma demanded, her voice rising. "You're a match. You could save my life. And why would I do that?" I shot back. "After all you've put me through? Do you think I owe you anything?" My dad stepped in. "This isn't about the past. This is about saving someone's life. You can't just stand by and let them die." I could feel my blood boiling. "You don't get it, do you? You're asking me to risk my health, my life, for someone who's treated me like garbage since the day she moved in. Why would I do that?" "She's your family," he said quietly. "No, she's your family," I snapped. "Not mine." The room fell silent. Emma looked like she was going to cry, but I didn't care. For once, I was the one in charge, and it felt good. "I'll think about it," I said finally, just to get her off my back. "But don't get your hopes up." I did think about it for a long time, and the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Not only at Emma, but also at my father. He'd let her take over our lives, let her treat me like I didn't matter, and now he wanted me to sacrifice a part of myself for her. I started to notice things, little things I hadn't paid attention to before, like how Emma's phone would light up with texts from someone named Big Bob whenever my dad wasn't around, or how she'd suddenly have work meetings that went on for hours and never seemed to lead to anything productive. When I noticed Emma's phone lighting up with texts from Big Bob, I couldn't stop looking at it. It was like every time I looked in her direction, there it was, another message. At first, I brushed it off, thinking it was probably just a coworker or friend. But the way she grabbed her phone and covered the screen every time my dad walked into the room? Yeah, that didn't sit right with me. So one night, when she left her phone charging in the kitchen, I decided to take a look. I know, snooping is wrong. But let's face it, Emma never deserved the benefit of the doubt. Her phone didn't even have a passcode, which was almost insulting. I scrolled through her messages with Big Bob, and within seconds, my stomach turned. The texts weren't just flirty. They were explicit. They talked about meetings, hotel stays, and, well, things I'd rather not repeat. One message stood out, though. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow after your doctor's appointment. Same place, 3 p.m. I hung up the phone, my hand shaking. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. That was all the confirmation I needed. The next day, I told my dad I was going out for a while. He barely looked up from his coffee, too busy doting on Emma, who lay on the couch like a fragile princess. I had already made up my mind. I was going to follow her. At exactly 2:45 p.m., I parked near a small boutique hotel on the edge of town. Sure enough, a few minutes later, Emma pulled up in her car. She got out and looked around nervously before going inside. I waited about 10 minutes before following her inside. The receptionist barely looked up as I walked by. It wasn't hard to figure out which room she was in. Big Bob was waiting at the end of the hall, leaning casually against the door frame. He was exactly what I'd imagined. A middle-aged guy with a beard, a gut, and a smug grin. Emma greeted him with a kiss, and they disappeared into the room together. I didn't need to see anything else. That evening, I sat across from my father in the living room. Emma was in the kitchen, probably scrolling through her phone as usual. "Dad," I started, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk." He looked up, worried. "What's wrong?" "It's about Emma," he sighed, already annoyed. "What now?" "She's cheating on you." His face froze. "What? She's cheating on you?" I repeated. "With some guy named Big Bob. I saw the texts on her phone and I followed her today. I watched her meet him in a hotel." The color drained from his face. For a moment, I thought he was going to yell at me or call me a liar, but instead, he just sat there staring at me. Are you sure? He finally asked. Positive. Before I could say anything else, Emma entered the room. She must have sensed the tension because she stopped and looked between us. What's going on? She asked. I didn't say a word. I just looked at my dad, waiting to see what he'd do. Is it true? He asked her, his voice barely above a whisper. She frowned. What are you talking about? Are you cheating on me? Emma's face twisted into a mixture of shock and anger. What? Of course not. Where is this coming from? Couldn't hold back anymore. Don't even try to lie, Emma. I saw the texts. I saw you with him at the hotel today. Her mouth opened and shut like a fish out of water. For once, she had nothing to say. My dad stood up, his fists clenched at his sides. Is it true? He asked again, louder this time. Emma finally broke down. Okay, fine. Yes, I've been seeing someone else. But you were so busy with work and taking care of me. You neglected me. What was I supposed to do? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was actually trying to blame him for cheating on her. You've got to be kidding me, I muttered. My dad looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. He didn't say anything. He just turned and walked out of the room. Emma tried to follow him, but I blocked her path. You ruined everything, she hissed at me. No, I said, glaring at her. You did it all by yourself. For the next few days, the house was a war zone. My dad and Emma fought constantly, and I stayed out of the way as much as I could. I thought this would finally be the end of their relationship, but then something happened that I didn't see coming. My dad forgave her. According to him, Emma had explained everything. How she needed constant male attention because of her insecurities and how it was his fault for being away so much. And he bought it. He really bought it. I was done. I told my dad I couldn't live in that house anymore, and I moved into a small apartment I'd been saving up for. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and for the first time in years I felt free. I thought I'd wash my hands of the whole mess, but of course, life had other plans. Moving out was supposed to be my clean break, but it wasn't. I still talked to my dad occasionally, mostly out of obligation, and every conversation somehow ended up coming back to Emma. How she was getting worse, how they were still struggling to find a kidney donor, how much he was sacrificing to take care of her. I didn't care. Or at least, I told myself I didn't. A month after I moved out, I got a call from my dad. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. I need you to come over, he said. His voice sounded strange, tired, shaky. Why? I asked, already regretting answering. It's important. Please. Reluctantly, I agreed. When I arrived at the house, Emma was nowhere to be seen. My dad was sitting at the dining room table with a drink in his hand, staring off into space. What's going on? I asked. He looked up at me, and I could tell he'd been crying. I found something, he said. He handed me a stack of papers. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Medical records, prescriptions, bills, and then I saw it, Big Bob's name. What is this? I asked. It's a bill from the private doctor she's been seeing, he said, his voice cracking. For treatments. Treatments. He paid for it. It hit me like a freight train. Emma wasn't just cheating with Big Bob. She was using him to cover her medical expenses. She told me she was skipping appointments because we couldn't afford them, my dad continued. But she was seeing him all the time, and he was paying for everything. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. So let me get this straight. The guy she's cheating with is also her sugar daddy? My dad winced at the term but didn't deny it. Why are you still with her? I asked, genuinely confused. She's sick, he said quietly. I can't just leave her. I wanted to shake him. She left you the moment she started screwing around behind your back. And now she's got some other guy footing the bill for her treatments while you break your back trying to save her. He didn't answer, and that's when I realized I couldn't save him either. A few weeks later, Emma's health took a turn for the worse. She was in and out of the hospital, and my dad started calling me more often, asking if I'd reconsider donating my kidney. Absolutely not, I told him each time. Then one day, I got a message from Emma herself. I didn't even know she had my number. Can we talk? Just us. I should have ignored it, but something about it piqued my curiosity. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop, thinking it would be a disaster, but I wasn't prepared for what she said. "I know you don't like me," she began, her voice weak and shaky. "And I know I haven't been the best stepmother. But I'm begging you, please just consider helping me. I don't want to die." I stared at her, trying to find an ounce of sincerity in her words. "Why don't you ask Big Bob?" I said, leaning back in my chair. "He seems more than willing to help." She didn't deny it. Instead, she started to cry. "It's not what you think. He offered to help, and I didn't know what else to do. Your dad couldn't afford it and you can't blame this on him," I snapped. "You lied to him for years. Why should I risk my life for someone who treats him like dirt and then runs to another man when the going gets tough?" She reached across the table and took my hand. "Please," she whispered. "I'll do anything. Just please." I pulled my hand away in disgust. "The answer is no. And if you really cared about my dad, you'd leave and stop dragging him down with you." I walked away without looking back. That should have been the end of it, but things got even crazier. A few days later, my dad called me in a panic. "Emma's gone," he said. "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "She left, packed her things and disappeared. She didn't even leave a note." I wanted to say good riddance, but something didn't sit right with me. Why would she leave now when she was so sick? I decided to look into it, and what I found shocked me. Emma hadn't just left. She'd emptied out their joint savings account before she left. Over $20,000 gone. "She took everything," my father said, his voice hollow. "Everything I worked for." I should have felt sorry for him, but all I felt was relief. Maybe now he'd finally see her for who she really was. But then, 2 weeks later, Emma returned. And this time she wasn't alone. She brought Big Bob with her. I thought my dad would lose his mind. He called me right after it happened, his voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "She brought him here," he said, "to our house." I couldn't believe it either. "What do you mean she brought him here? What's he doing?" "She said she needed help, that Bob was here to support her recovery. She just walked in like nothing happened and told me I should be grateful that he was stepping up where I wouldn't." I drove over to the house, more out of morbid curiosity than anything else. When I got there, I couldn't believe what I saw. Big Bob was sitting on the couch, feet up on the coffee table, acting like he owned the place. Emma was in the kitchen, casually chatting with my dad as if she hadn't just drained his bank account and left him. I walked in and the room fell silent. "What's he doing here?" I asked, pointing at Bob. Emma sighed, as if I was the unreasonable one. "I told your father. Bob is here to help me through my recovery. He's been so supportive." I looked at my dad, expecting him to explode, but he just stood there, defeated. "She says he's only staying for a little while," he muttered. "A little while? Are you kidding me?" I turned back to Emma. "You steal from him, cheat on him, and now you're moving your boyfriend into his house? How low can you go?" "It's not like that," Emma said, trying to sound innocent. "Bob's just a friend." "Yeah, right?" I said, glaring at Bob. "Is that why you've been sneaking off to hotels with him? Just a friend?" Bob finally spoke up, his voice as smug as his expression. "Look, kid, I don't know what your problem is, but Emma's been through a lot. Maybe you should show some compassion." I laughed bitterly. Compassion? For her? She's been nothing but a parasite on this family, and now she's dragging you into it. You deserve each other. Emma started to say something, but I cut her off. "No, I'm done. I'm done with this circus. Dad, if you want to keep letting her walk all over you, that's your choice. But I'm not sticking around to watch." My dad didn't say anything, and that hurt more than anything Emma or Bob could have said. I made my decision that night. I packed up the rest of my things and left my rented apartment. I called my mom and asked if I could stay with her and Stacy for a while. She didn't even hesitate. When I got to their house, it was like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. My mom gave me a big hug, and Stacy ran up to me like she hadn't seen me in years. "It's so good to have you here," my mom said. "You don't have to deal with this anymore." And she was right. As for my dad, well, things weren't so good for him. About a month after I left, Emma and Bob left again, this time for good. They cleaned out what little money my dad had left, leaving him with nothing but debt and heartbreak. He called me a few weeks later, apologized for everything, and asked if he could come visit. I told him I'd think about it, but the truth was, I needed space. I couldn't keep putting myself in the middle of his bad decisions. Now I live with my mom and Stacy, and for the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe. My relationship with my dad is distant but civil, and I've shut Emma and Big Bob out of every corner of my life. I don't know where they are now, and honestly, I don't care. I just hope they never show their faces around here again. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.